Chapter 241, Potential Breakthrough. Freeze. Invisible waves locked onto Feng Lin and the group of people from the Heavenly King planet, as if they were a law of causation that was destined to happen. It bound around them, causing them to be unable to break free. An abnormal baleful aura pressed down on their hearts. Wherever the auras passed by, the laws would become chaotic. Green veins popped up on Feng Lin's forehead and kept on twitching non-stop, as if they were going to explode. He trembled uncontrollably. This was an instinctive fear that one would feel when encountering a higher-grade life form, one that was beyond imagination. It was as if they had the locking curse performed on them. Even the clouds under Feng Lin's feet started to become unstable. The group of people from the Heavenly King planet was in a worse state. Prince Hiselo's expression became twisted as he struggled. The sword chi under his feet became unstable and the light started to flicker. His subordinates were capable of hanging in the air by the sword chi he had sent out. They didn't have flying abilities. As the sword chi started to go out of control and become unstable, they kept crying out as they plunged toward the ground like dumplings. Before they landed, the group of murderers in the desolate desert had already cried out excitedly toward the sky. They pounced toward the people from the Heavenly King planet, splitting the meat amongst them. No matter how brutal wild beasts were, they didn't eat their own kind. These murderers were worse off than wild beasts. They were like devils that had crawled out from hell, crazily biting and tearing into the flesh. Their mouths were filled with blood and their eyes were gleaming. The group of people from the Heavenly King planet cried out agonizingly. Many stinking mouths were right before them, and they could only watch as they were torn apart and devoured. This weird scene sent shivers down one's spine. However, the baleful aura shook people's hearts. The people from the Heavenly King planet were struck by the locking curse and rendered immobile. They couldn't put up any resistance and could only watch as their companions died horrible deaths. Feng Lin's spirit was also restrained and the clouds started to tremble intensely. The three of them could no longer stand steadily. He quickly agitated his mind, wanting to recover as soon as possible. He suddenly sensed that there was an extremely horrifying existence entrenched on the ground. It locked onto them as if they were something that was already within its grasp. Golden light flashed in Yana's eyes. Waves of lofty and dignified aura appeared on her skinny body. She suddenly broke free from the spiritual restraint and woke up. Wake up! Looking at Feng Lin and her younger sister Eris's struggling expressions, her gaze was solemn and she started to form imprints with her hands. A beam of golden light appeared on one of her palms, turning into a golden staff that she grabbed with both hands. It was slightly blurry and had not completely taken form. However, when Yana grabbed it in her hands, her disposition immediately changed. It was as if she was the goddess of wisdom who was holding on to the scepter of God, looking down onto the mortal world. She waved her hand slightly. Dong dong dong. The golden rings on the scepter knocked into each other, producing clear sounds. These sounds were like the sound of bells from the divine empire in the starry sky, baptizing the hearts of humans and awakening their minds. Feng Lin's body trembled and he woke up in shock. His consciousness became extremely clear. He looked at Yana. As expected of a cultivator who took the path of Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Although her battle prowess might not be strong, she had great wisdom and had a calm temperament. She was terrifying in a sense. Help me to stabilize my spirit, Feng Lin said to Yana. All right. Feng Lin started to amass his spirit force once again, bringing the water vapor in the air together to form clouds that propped the three of them up. A soft questioning exclamation rang out. Amongst the group of murderers, a pair of bloodshot eyes flashed out from the sedan that was raised by over 20 people. Its gaze locked onto Feng Lin and the other two as the trio attempted to leave. Extinguish, That hoarse voice still sounded lazy, but the tone became stronger than before. The moment the words came out, the magical art took place. Words that were said couldn't be taken back. Invisible waves extended out once again, filled with destructive intents. Wherever they passed by, everything would be turned into dust. Feng Lin's body swayed intensely, and the clouds under his feet started to disintegrate at a speed that was faster than earlier. His ability was completely suppressed, and it was hard for him to maintain it. This wasn't an ordinary pressure. It was filled with intense spiritual deterrence that applied great pressure on the spirit. Both the body and the heart was completely suppressed. Feng Lin stimulated his heart monkey force, and a vicious aura rose in his heart. It fought against the material-like baleful aura. Ding-ling-ling. The divine scepter in Yana's hand kept on swaying intensely, releasing a series of sounds that cleansed a person's heart and soul. Feng Lin's spirit continued to remain clear, and he felt extremely thankful that he didn't go on separate paths with the two ladies after he had attained a breakthrough in his cultivation. One's cultivation and battle prowess weren't equivalent. Interstellar cultivators' abilities weren't just for use in battle. There were also their adaptation abilities in various complicated environments in the universe. Some abilities might not have strong battle prowess or many uses, but they might have unbelievable effects in certain strange environments. This was how it was for Yana. Her battle prowess was very weak, but her intelligence was developed to a very high degree. The power of her spirit and will were above that of Feng Lin's. Feng Lin's heart throbbed. Regardless if it was Eris whose ferocity surpassed that of men's or Yana with her outstanding wisdom, they were both great talents. Weren't these just what the Mythological Genes Association needed? The universe was boundless, and regardless of how strong a person was, there would be limitations. One would need to keep on strengthening their own forces concurrently until the day that they established their own standings in the universe. However, all of these were stuff meant for the future. He would still need to plan for the long run. Go. Feng Lin tossed away all the distractions in his mind and brought along the two ladies with him. This Killer King was clearly not a person to trifle with, and was an extremely vicious existence. In order to prevent any further complications, it would be better to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, by the time he reacted and attacked at full power, it would be very difficult for him to retreat safely. Feng Lin didn't even turn back and left at full speed. Interesting, the Killer King's hoarse voice rang out again. To think that these three exam candidates had such means to break out from her restraints. They weren't simple. Feng Lin was too far away now. The Killer King gave it some thought and didn't continue to give chase. Instead, he sent his invisible pressure onto the people from the Heavenly King planet. Only 3 candidates had left, and these remaining people were the bigger targets. Heaping all of them here could allow his subordinates to have a good meal. The Killer King increased his pressure, and the sword lights were crushed. The people from the Heavenly King planet came plunging down like dumplings. The murderers who had gone into primitive state on the Azura planet since a long time ago let out excited howls and came crowding over, enjoying the rare delicacies. The fresh, tender flesh and blood had them craving for very long. The agonizing cries on the ground continued on endlessly. Prince Hisello stood on the flying sword, his entire body affixed, and he faced mountain-like pressure. These adulterous bastards. He looked at the trio's departing figures and clenched his teeth. If it wasn't for them, how could he and his subordinates land in such a dangerous plight and suffer great casualties? Now that they managed to run off, we're in deep trouble. This prince from the Heavenly King planet felt great hatred for Feng Lin and the 2 ladies. Suppress. The Killer King once again let out an explosive bellow, and his pressure was great as the mountain, pressing down heavily. This caused Hisello's spine to crack, unable to withstand the great weight. It felt as if his spine was going to break. The sword light exploded intensely as well. This Killer King's cultivation was far too terrifying. If things were to continue to drag on, he would really be unable to get away. Being seen as a genius in the royal family, although Vasello was used to being arrogant, he wasn't a fool. He instantly made a decision. Platinum light flashed on his face and the flying sword under his feet suddenly exploded, bringing forth violent air currents that scattered the pressure in the sky. Without saying a word, he rode on the remnants of the sword light and rapidly left. His unlucky subordinates were left behind, and he didn't pay them any more heed. Humph. Experiencing repeated failures, the Killer King's voice became increasingly eerie. Even though the Azura planet is very big, there's no way for you to escape. His bloody and malevolent gaze glared at Feng Lin and the others, recording them deeply in his heart. The group of murderers behind him were like hungry ghosts as they pounced toward the cultivators who plunged to the ground, starting to eat them up in big bites. The desert was dyed in the color of blood. Feng Lin had left a long time ago, and naturally had no idea that someone had set their minds on him. After breaking away from the Killer King's constraints as well as the pursuit from the people of the Heavenly King planet, Feng Lin moved rapidly. He found a quiet cave and took a rest. The trio landed on the ground and started panting. They had first wiped out a large-scale aberration mother nest and then had a conflict against the people from the Heavenly King planet, not given any chance to rest at all. They were far too tired and must quickly recover. The two ladies each took out a guard-type gene hypothesis and started cultivating. Feng Lin was even more extravagant. He took out the large-scale queen's gene hypothesis that was as big as an elephant's head and started to engulf it in big bites. With each bite he took, blood would splatter, filling up his mouths. The pungent smell permeated the surroundings. Ordinary people would find it hard to bear. However, Feng Lin had long since gotten used to devouring things in their primitive state. As long as he could strengthen himself, he didn't care for the taste and his brows wouldn't even twitch. Smelling the blood stench, the bloodthirst gene started to circulate by itself. Working together with the art of transforming energy into qi, Feng Lin's stomach was like a furnace, operating at full capacity to absorb the essence from the blood to replenish his body. The stronger the stench of the blood, the greater the amount of nutrition. Feng Lin engulfed in big bites, and seething energy gushed into his body. His body was like a dry desert that had been nourished by water, releasing vigorous vitality. His genetic potential started to increase at an unprecedented speed. Plus 108%, plus 108%, plus 108%. The rate of Feng Lin's growth was far too astonishing and his body became stronger at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. This large-scale aberration queen was different from the small-scale queen. Her battle prowess was astonishing, and it was a powerful transcendent creature. The nourishment in her blood also far surpassed that of her own kind, having absorbed the essence of a variety of living creatures. Her blood was a great source of nourishment, causing the growth of Feng Lin's genetic potential to surpass 100%. Powerful qi activities emitted from his body, bringing forth wind that caused the two ladies to wake up in surprise. What a powerful vitality this was! The rate of his recovery was far too astonishing. The two ladies were extremely surprised and their eyelids kept twitching. They could sense an intense pressure from Feng Lin's vitality. It was very similar to that of the ultimate Killer Kings. When the pressure materialized, it could interfere with the actual world. This was a display of rapid growth in one's vitality. How could ordinary people possibly possess such a cultivating speed? It was extremely terrifying. The Greek sisters exchanged a glance, their gazes filled with surprise. Since young, they had been taught by their irresponsible father, and their cultivation knowledge far surpassed that of ordinary peoples. Ever since they came into contact with Feng Lin, they discovered that their perspectives toward cultivation had been broken and crushed. They had seen Feng Lin's changes over the past few days. The rate of his progress was far too astonishing. It was like sitting on a rocket. How did he do that? Which mythological path did he take? The Greek sisters felt extremely curious. The rate of Feng Lin's improvement gave them tremendous stress. If they didn't work hard, they would probably be tossed far behind him. The two ladies secretly found a spot that was very far away from Feng Lin, just in case so that they wouldn't be disturbed, and then started fully focusing on their cultivation once again. Feng Lin was in deep focus. His body was like a furnace, refining the nourishment. The unprecedented rate of growth in his potential allowed his body to continue to progress toward energy evolution. Humans were matter-based life forms, and their energy evolution process couldn't be achieved at one go. The transformation to their lives required progress in small steps. The limit of an elite cultivator was to reach 20% in the energy evolution process. The higher the degree of completion, the stronger one's senses would be toward the energy of the universe. They would be able to freely take reign of energy with every action and possess great battle prowess. It was very amazing. Energy evolution 3.61%, 3.62%, 3.63%. The ratio rose slowly. This cultivation took Feng Lin an entire night to complete. His potential surged explosively, reaching 13,180%. As his cultivation improved, his requirement for genetic potential also increased tremendously. It was a good thing that his cultivation could keep up with it. His genetic potential exceeded 10,000%, and this also meant that Feng Lin obtained a free transcendent grade genetic point. He didn't give it a second thought and added the point directly. His attributes suddenly changed. Name, Feng Lin. Vitality, 370. Transcendent grade gene, Spiritual Stone Monkey Gene X2. Primeval gene, Stone Monkey Gene X10, Spirit Gene X10. Basic gene, Monkey Gene X10, Stone Birth Gene X10, Adrenaline Gene X4, Mental Gene X9, Psychokinesis Gene X6, Spirituality Gene X8, Bloodthirst Gene X10. Genetic potential, 3,180%. The Spiritual Stone Monkey gene's strengthening tally changed from 1 to 2, and his vitality suddenly surged by 52 points. Feng Lin's body kept on changing and his muscles shook, moving unsteadily like flowing water. Sometimes, his figure would be as burly as a giant's, sometimes it would be as thin as a matchstick, and sometimes he would be as strong as a cow. His body changed randomly. Clearly, as the Spiritual Stone Monkey gene strengthened, his mastery over his figure was brought to a higher realm. However, this was far from being enough. In order to reach the level of being able to change matter and spirit with his art of transformations, his strengthening tally would still need to be higher. Feng Lin opened his eyes, seemed to be deep in thought. Right now, his genetic potential had suddenly hit a growth past 100%. It was no longer suitable for it to be displayed by percentages. In the past, the growth rate of his genetic potential was far too slow. It was less than 1 genetic point per session. That was why the display was in the form of percentages. Every 100% was the lowest level of free basic gene genetic points. However, as Feng Lin's cultivation continued to attain breakthroughs, the increment in genetic potential could no longer be lower than 100%. It would be extremely troublesome to continue to use this unit of measurement. Feng Lin's heart throbbed. The genetic potential on his attributes window suddenly changed from 3,180% to 31.8. The percent was no longer there, and the unit became basic gene genetic points. The two ladies also woke up in succession with lights gleaming in their eyes. Their disposition was very different from before. Clearly, they had benefited a lot. The path of cultivation was one with a suitable amount of tension and relaxation. The two ladies came to the Azura planet and had been through a series of massacre. Their accumulated experience had become a resource for them to rapidly attain breakthroughs in their cultivation. There were endless benefits. Seeing that, Feng Lin went deep into thought. The massacre trial on the Azura planet wasn't just a simple test. It was an intense competitive experience, and only the real experts would be able to go through the dangers and keep on getting stronger, standing out from the rest of the several 100,000 genius candidates across the solar system. Who's that ultimate killer king? Why is there such a terrifying murderer on the Azura planet? To think that the person can subdue all the other murderers and proclaim himself to be king. Seeing the two ladies waking up, Feng Lin asked this question. Yana knew of Azura planet's background and was definitely clear of the background of this ultimate killer king. Yana's brows furrowed deeply. She spoke up only after a very long time had passed. Her voice was unprecedentedly heavy, horrifying, and extremely wary. If my guess is right, then that person is the ultimate killer king, heretic god of the Blood Sea, who had caused a storm of massacre in the southern Milky Way galaxy in the past, killing millions of people. Chapter 242, Heretic God of the Blood Sea. Heretic God of the Blood Sea? One would know instantly that someone with such a name wouldn't be any kind soul. Feng Lin felt somewhat puzzled. He didn't say anything and continued to listen. That's right, Yana spoke. Once, a devilish killer appeared in the southern Milky Way galaxy. At the start, although this person's cultivation base wasn't too high, his methods were extremely cruel and he also had a crafty personality. He roamed the various large planets and committed many crimes. Also, he used the corpses and blood of people to perform terrifying bloody ceremonies to strengthen his body. It's said that whenever he killed someone, he would leave behind a row of words when the human world turned into a sea of blood, and Azura would become a heretic god. He was also extremely intelligent and made use of all sorts of technology, committing all sorts of sins. In total, he has killed millions of people alone and had completely lost his humanity. However, many interstellar empires of the southern Milky Way galaxy had no way to trace him, which allowed him to remain uncaptured. He took some time off from his hobby to use his Blood Sea ceremony to enhance his cultivation, becoming an elite cultivator from an ordinary mortal using just a month of time. After that, he vanished without a trace and was eventually captured in a small country. Due to his crimes being too severe, he was eventually sentenced to life imprisonment here on Azura planet. Feng Lin listened on with a look of contemplation on his face. The heretic god was such a scheming individual. Those super interstellar empires failed to capture him, but he was eventually captured by a small country? Something sounded very wrong here. The heretic god got caught on purpose, right? Feng Lin asked, having a speculation in his heart. Yana nodded heavily. Although there is no concrete proof, I'm afraid this is probably the case. But why? Why would he surrender himself? Is he not afraid of being awarded the death sentence? Feng Lin furrowed his brows, not understanding why the Killer King would choose to do this. He paid close attention to the Killer King's history and origins. This heretic god of the Blood Sea had subdued so many death criminals, so his cultivation base must be extraordinary and could be said to be a great boss here on Azura planet. In the future, if they encountered him, the heretic god would undoubtedly be an extremely deadly enemy. Hence, how could Feng Lin not pay close attention to this powerhouse? Yana, who was at the side, also frowned in puzzlement. As they interacted, she discovered many strange points about Feng Lin. He knew many things, especially about some deep secrets regarding cultivation. However, he didn't seem to know of the common knowledge. This was simply too weird. But that, after all, was his personal secret, so she didn't probe too much. She then spoke, "Feng Lin, you don't understand the situation of the interstellar world too well. You must know that death penalty isn't considered the harshest punishment in this era. For some evil people who committed extremely heinous crimes, giving them the death penalty would be treating them too lightly. We have to give them sentences that ensure their lives would be worse than death before the sentence would be effective. Deporting them to Azure planet is one type of such sentences. They have to stay on this planet with the aberrations and face the dangers of being devoured every time. Such a sentence is much more effective than simply death. But from my estimations, I discovered that the Killer King isn't so simple. The number of crimes he committed isn't too little or too much, just in the acceptable range to be deported to Azure planet. How strange. I didn't expect him to have subdued so many death criminals here. I wonder what he is planning." Feng Lin's expression suddenly changed when he heard that. He hurriedly spoke, "Quickly open up the map of Azure planet." Yana was startled after hearing this sudden request, but she instantly understood something. She then swiftly tapped her ID microchip and opened up the holographic map of Azure planet. "What's the matter?" Eris, who was at the side, had a look of confusion on her face. Yana explained in a heavy voice, "This ultimate Killer King is incomparably intelligent and extremely scheming. There's a purpose behind every action he takes. Now that he gathered so many criminals, what is he trying to do?" The three of them swept their gazes over, staring at the trajectory of the groups of criminals. Upon following the trajectory, their eyes moved to a point on the map where the red-colored head of a devil could be seen as a symbol. That place was none other than the location of the gigantic Scale Queen. Yana frowned and fell into contemplation as her mind spun rapidly. Feng Lin was also deep in thought. It was impossible that things were so simple. How could the heretic god be so kind-hearted and take on such a huge risk to kill the gigantic Scale Queen? This didn't conform to logic at all, and it wasn't worth it. The heretic god wouldn't be able to gain anything. After killing so many aberrations as well as his memories from his previous life, if one was to talk about understanding of the aberrations, Feng Lin would undoubtedly be the top 3 on Azure planet. He was very clear that other than exchanging the thumbs of these monsters for points, they weren't that valuable. Their blood was acidic, and only their gene hypothesis was nutritious. That was all to it. However, these criminals weren't exam candidates. Why did they need points? The Killer King expended so much effort to come to Azure planet. Was it really just for surviving? This completely didn't conform with logic. There must be a deeper secret here. In that case, what else would there be for the Killer King to do this? The information was too little. At this point in time, Feng Lin wasn't able to make any accurate judgments. At this moment, Yana spoke, verifying his conjecture. This ultimate Killer King cannot simply be a slaughterer. He should be a genius criminal, or he wouldn't have been able to cause so much havoc where everyone had to fear for their safety in the southern Milky Way galaxy with his cultivation base at the elite cultivator realm. One must know that there are other criminals with even higher cultivation bases who can't do what he did to that extent. He mastered many methods of killing and is proficient in using technology. In any case, he is extremely lethal and can be considered one of the most terrifying terrorists in the universe. He has no sense of morality and brings calamity everywhere with him, causing endless trouble. Such a human must have expended much effort to subdue so many death criminals on this planet. He should have some grand ambition in his mind. There must be some secrets hidden on Azure planet that attracts him. She and Feng Lin exchanged mutual glances. Evidently, they thought of the same thing and felt the layers of fog unraveling before their eyes, revealing the truth. There was an extremely huge risk in doing so, but also an extremely great opportunity. Should they go or not? The three of them fell silent. Even before Feng Lin said anything, Yana's eyes flashed with determination as she spoke in a low voice, "Let us go and take a look." Feng Lin looked at her in a different light now. He didn't expect Yana, who was someone with intelligence yet lacking in courage, to actually make such a risky decision. They just escaped from the Killer King, and now, they were about to jump back into his palm again. The danger was extremely great. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to have the determination to make this decision. Staring at his puzzled look, Yana laughed softly. "Do you still remember what I told you before? I said that I would make you the king of solar system. I will not go back on my word. My strength is too weak, it's impossible for me to become the top scorer of this exam. But with the support of my intelligence, I can help someone to attain that. If I can't even do so, this exam would truly be too boring for me." Her soft look changed as her eyes gleamed sharply. "Now, we have already slaughtered many small-scale and medium-scale mother nests, including a large-scale one. We already have a huge advantage. Although I don't know the points of other people, I can roughly calculate it. There are only 3 large-scale mother nests, and we have already annihilated one. Basically, it can already ascertain our scores to be at the top. There's only one exception. And that is if the gigantic scale mother nest is wiped out by others." Feng Lin continued for her. For every increase in grade for queen-type aberrations, the points they represented would surge up by 10 times. If the gigantic scale aberration queen was killed by someone, the points that person would obtain would surge up to a standard no one could match. "That's right." Yana smiled, the light of intelligence in her eyes glowing brighter and brighter. Initially, it was impossible for people to attack the gigantic scale mother nest. But now with the presence of the ultimate Killer King, things are not certain. Many variables are in place. Hence, we have to go there and check the situation out. If the gigantic scale mother nest isn't exterminated, we would undoubtedly be the first in this exam round, and there's no need for us to take the risk. If an unexpected thing happened in the end, it wouldn't be too late for us to act and steal the food from the mouth of the tiger, securing our advantage. "Sure." Feng Lin nodded. This was undoubtedly a very safe method. He thought about things a little longer and directly asked, "Why me?" "If you need someone to become the king of the solar system, Eris should be strong enough, and she is also your younger sister. You could choose to assist her." As for her true purpose, Feng Lin still felt a little doubtful ever since the start. Would there be anyone so kind to selflessly help another to become number 1 in the solar system? He and she were just strangers who had met by chance. If someone told him that Yana had no other purpose at all, Feng Lin wouldn't believe it. To his question, Yana smiled and didn't conceal anything. She confidently replied, "For my mythological path, I cannot fight directly, but my intelligence far surpasses my peers. If I cannot obtain the first place in the solar system using my intelligence indirectly, I would take it as a personal failure. At the start, I initially thought to assist my sister and help her take the throne. This was why I decided to ally with you to kill the queens after seeing your strength. At that time, I only need to save enough points to pass the round and will transfer my remaining points all to her, allowing her to be number 1. However, your strength increased too fast and is too powerful, obtaining the majority of the points and far surpassing us. This completely rendered my earlier plan useless." So this was the case. Feng Lin understood and didn't reveal a too surprised expression. He had speculated that it was something like this, and indeed, he was right. Initially, when he allied with the two of them, it could be said that he was fighting them 1 against 2. His chance of victory was too minimal. If it wasn't for the fact that he rose too quickly and his strength was decent, there would be no hope at all. However, although Feng Lin guessed it, he wasn't bothered at all. This was an open scheme. This Yana was actually willing to pass on her points to her younger sister Eris. Feng Lin couldn't say anything to that either. After some time, the sky turned bright. Feng Lin and the two sisters also made their decisions. Given the fact that Azura planet only had so large of a space, the number of aberrations was naturally limited. The points the exam candidates could get were also limited. Out of the 3 large-scale mother nests, they had already exterminated one and occupied a huge advantage. This was also one of the reasons why the Prince of the Heavenly King planet had a conflict with them. Other than personal grudges, seizing resources in terms of points was also another reason. Things weren't as simple as the prince wanting revenge for old debts between the sisters and him. Feng Lin's group then depended on his cloud soar ability and flew toward their targeted location, intending on settling this last piece of trouble. Their speed was quick. Very soon, a stretch of sea appeared before their eyes, shining bright red like it was formed from blood. From afar, a strong fishy smell drifted over. This is the Blood Sea of Azura planet. The waters are filled with metallic elements which give the waters their color, resembling blood. This place is also the location of the gigantic scale mother nest. Yana spoke. Feng Lin's heart stirred. The Blood Sea and the heretic god of the Blood Sea? Was this really just a coincidence? Look quickly. They were above the clouds, and Eris suddenly pointed her finger below. The two of them glanced over and saw that on the shore, over 7,000 exam candidates had gathered here. They were more than half of those who came to participate in the second round of exams. Clearly, these candidates were all intelligent people. They also knew that this was the location of the gigantic scale queen. As long as they could kill it, they could rise in a single move, becoming the king of the solar system. Their thinking was beautiful, but their current situation wasn't too optimistic. A group of savage killers rushed over and engulfed them like the tides. Each of them cackled and roared, their faces as hideous as an evil ghost. The eyes of the criminals flared with greed when they stared at the exam candidates, treating them as food. They wanted nothing more than to slash these exam candidates into pieces. These criminals basically didn't treat the students as their own race at all. They only felt intense hunger and radiated powerful, chilling killing intent. For a period of time, the exam candidates entered hell on earth, facing malicious ghosts from all directions. However, they weren't weaklings either. They naturally fought back and unleashed all sorts of wondrous genetic abilities. There was a stone giant whose fists were like hammers. A fiery ring manifested around an expert, like he was a fire god who descended to the mortal world, burning everything he came into contact with to cinders. The sound of flapping wings rang out, summoning the wind and rain, using the forces of nature. All of these were peak geniuses of the solar system. It could be said that they were the solar system's essence. Their techniques naturally wouldn't be weak and far surpassed their peers. This was a battle of extraordinary powers and could be said to be incomparably intense, like demons and devils dancing in riotous revelry. Feng Lin's horizons were broadened as he watched in detail at the side. These exam candidates could all be considered his opponents. With such a good chance to observe them, how would he miss it? These death criminals might not be as strong as the exam candidates individually, but they had overwhelming numbers on their side. Through so many years, given how vast the southern Milky Way galaxy was, it was unknown how many death criminals had been deported here. Those criminals who were still alive had all gathered here today. Each of them radiated a terrifying aura, and considering the big picture, they actually fought on equal grounds with the exam candidates. However, among the death criminals, there was still an extremely terrifying existence, the Killer King. Although he didn't reveal himself, they could hear him calling out words of truth. Lock. Exterminate. Disperse. Suppress. These simple words sounded ordinary, yet they contained a boundless might. As the sound waves gushed forward, the exam candidates were all affected and their combat prowess became greatly reduced. Several even ended up heavily injured or dying. Some of the weakened exam candidates were actually grabbed and devoured by the death criminals. These poor souls screamed in extreme pain and agony on the verge of death, causing chills to rise in the hearts of others. The exam candidates were forced to retreat as their groups started to collapse from the pressure. Upon hearing the sound waves in the air, Feng Lin hid at the side while paying attention to it. The words spoken didn't seem to be in Chinese or any of the more commonly used language in the universe. This was an ancient language. Sanskrit. Could the mythological path this killer king be walking on was? Feng Lin hadn't thought through things clearly, but at this moment, the situation on the field had already changed completely. The solar system's exam candidates were completely at a disadvantage. They kept falling back as their defenses crumbled. The situation grew more and more dangerous for them. After observing for a long time, Yana suddenly had a discovery. She sighed in a heavy voice. Not good. This is a plot to rouse the tiger to eat the wolves. Chapter 243, Great Sky Formation. Rouse the tiger to swallow the wolves? Feng Lin sank into deep thoughts. Yana's words made sense. These students were all extremely talented and had a high degree of strength. It wasn't an exaggeration to claim that they resembled ferocious tigers. As for these aberrations, they were even more savage than the most savage wolves, devouring all lives as their prey. This ultimate killer king didn't act earlier, but he chose to act now precisely during the second exam of the Cosmos University. By doing so, he clearly wanted to use the strength of these exam candidates to probe the power level of the gigantic scale mother nest, setting up a situation where the exam candidates had to fight against the aberrations. In that case, there must be something he desired very badly inside the gigantic scale mother nest. These exam candidates were treated as food by the death criminals. The criminals rushed over, their bloodshot eyes gleaming with greed while drool leaked from their mouths. Destroy, destroy, destroy. The ultimate killing king kept speaking the words of truth. The power of his words transformed into a vast might that surrounded space, suppressing all his enemies. This was a kind of ability that used speech to unleash its power. Sadly, that killer king remained hidden in the sedan chair from the start until the end, not revealing his true features. Other than the power of his words of truth, Feng Lin found it very hard to gauge his true level of power. But at the very least, this killer king should have already reached the grand completion phase of the elite cultivator realm. What did he want exactly? Was there a powerful treasure in the mother nest? Feng Lin couldn't help but ponder. This gigantic scale mother nest, were there some wondrous objects in there that filled the ultimate killer king's heart with desire? He first subdued and gathered the death criminals here and then he roused the exam candidates, creating a huge commotion. Feng Lin's heart trembled when he suddenly thought of a point he had neglected before. Bugs had the nature of phototaxis, and for the aberrations, they instinctively liked to be near places where there was a concentration of energy. The larger the mother nest was, the more it meant that the food in the nearby surroundings was in abundance, indicating that there were strong energy waves in the surroundings. Since this was a gigantic scale mother nest that contained the strongest transcendent creature here on Azura planet, the deepest layer of the mother nest might be the location with the strongest energy reaction on the entire planet. This large Azura planet was also a life planet. After countless years, how could there not be some unique or wondrous locations? No one would believe that there was none. Feng Lin instinctively gathered his spirit force in his eyes. He activated his spirit vision and started to scan his surroundings. All living things in heaven and earth would radiate a faint layer of energy luster. He could clearly see them now, with his spirit vision. Within the blood sea, he saw numerous faint but concentrated red energy beams congregating together. But the strange thing was that the energy intensity level here wasn't very large. Just when Feng Lin was puzzled, a scream of agony attracted his attention. The waves of the blood sea churned as numerous aberrations with fish scales over their bodies leaped out from the sea. Their dangerous maws opened wide as they rushed toward the prey in their eyes. These aberrations were different from the others he had faced before. Fish scales covered their entire bodies. They seemed to be a kind of aberration that lived inside the water. Aberrations could adapt to different environments thanks to their genes. Their genes contained boundless possibilities in regard to evolution. Clearly, these were all new types of aberrations. Their forms changed greatly, but their ferociousness didn't diminish. They leaped out of the water one by one, and they had webbed palms and feet that ended with claws. Wasting no time, they immediately lunged over, wanting to rip humans apart and feasting on them. The exam candidates were all in a state of panic as they screamed in misery. Behind them, aberrations were eating them. In front of them, the death criminals were killing them while feasting on them too. The exam candidates were surrounded by enemies from all directions and were in a situation of extreme danger, suffering heavy casualties. These death criminals were like ferocious ghosts, biting off the flesh of the exam candidates as they attacked. Their actions were extremely crazy, and they even fought with each other to be the first to enjoy a bite. The blood waves undulated, their height growing increasingly taller as more sea-type aberrations appeared. They were like sea-patrolling yikshaws from the myths. Their personalities were cruel and they loved reaping lives. Upon facing predators from the front and back, the exam candidates suffered huge casualties and instinctively moved nearer to each other as rage filled their expressions. These were all peak geniuses of the solar system, elites among their peers from the same age group. When had they ever suffered such great humiliation? Being treated as food by others? We can't simply wait for our death. Let's join forces to kill these aberrations and death criminals. How should we do it? The exam candidates fought as they ponder. With their lives on the line, they started to cooperate tacitly and search for a way to break free. Everyone, I know of a great sky formation that can deal with the situation. Transfer all your genetic energy over, allowing them to gather, a voice shouted. After that, a tall male exam candidate walked out. He had an oriental appearance, yet his hair was as resplendent as the sun. With a loud shout, he took out an ancient giant bell that floated in the air, spinning around rapidly. There were pictures of the sun, moon, and stars engraved upon it as it weaved a scene of the sky. Rays of light were emitted from the bell, transforming into a light screen that enveloped all the exam candidates, causing the pressure on them to be greatly alleviated. Upon seeing this, the confidence of the exam candidates rose greatly as they continued to send a variety of genetic energy over. Wind, fire, thunder, lightning, metal, wood, earth, light, darkness, all sorts of energy gathered together, transforming into resplendent constellations. In the end, after the power of everyone was gathered, the light screen actually transformed into a star screen, filled with numerous shiny constellations. Great sky formation. The constellations were packed closely together, resulting in a giant barrier that protected everyone within it. The exam candidates worked together and eventually managed to stabilize the situation. Although those death criminals were fierce, they only had such great momentum early on because of their emotions. If one was to talk about their cultivation bases, they were far from sufficient to be compared to these geniuses of the solar system. When these exam candidates decided to work together because of their lives and cast aside all their past grudges, they instantly erupted forth with a level of power far mightier than 1 + 1 = 2 principle. The Great Sky Formation congregated the various types of genetic energy and transformed them into golden stars, blocking the aberrations and death criminals from entering. They had no way to force their way through, as the barrier's defense was too terrifying. But for the exam candidates, under protection from the formation, they could advance or retreat in order. They unleashed several techniques to kill the aberrations, accumulating points in a frenzy. Fenglin didn't feel rushed because of this. Quantity didn't indicate quality. These aberrations were just ants. No matter how much was killed, the points of others wouldn't be high enough to threaten him. But when he looked at the Great Sky Formation, his eyes gleamed with a bright light. The Tao of formations had existed since ancient times. They contained boundless profound secrets and could control the might of heavens and earth. Just for the era of Huaxia mythology, many formations containing the power to destroy the world existed. Fenglin could casually list out several of them. Example, the 9 Melodies Yellow River Formation, 10 Extinctions Formation, 10,000 Immortals Formation. There are countless. Above these, there were even the 3 most powerful world-destroying formations, the Immortal Slaying Sword Formation, Sky Constellation Great Formation, and 12 Heavenly Deities Termination Formation. For Western mythology, there were also many magical formations that were incredibly extraordinary. Fenglin's heart involuntarily stirred. He thought back to the mythological gene association he created. Right now, his association could only exist in a concealed manner, but sooner or later, the world would learn of it. Since it was considered a power, things would be too nonsensical if there wasn't a protective formation protecting it. Upon staring at the golden bell spinning above the Great Sky Formation, a surreptitious thought formed in his mind as he saw some clues. The sky was boundlessly vast, able to contain the countless constellations and the myriad of creatures in the world. There was a hint of divine grace in this Great Sky Formation. The various genetic energy types could gather with no rejections and be fused together to enhance the formation. It was extremely profound. The aberrations and death criminals attacked with all they got, but to no avail. The Great Formation grew more and more stable under the continuous infusion of genetic energy from the exam candidates. The barrier was akin to an unbreakable steel wall. The blood sea churned wildly, giving rise to towering blood waves. The aberrations surged forth in the thousands, wave after wave, akin to ants coming out of their nest and wanting to drown everything out. The constellations in the star screen shone brightly and unleashed energy rays to incinerate the aberrations as the exam candidates collected points in a frenzy. The death criminals at the other side also grew increasingly violent. These exam candidates were nothing but delicious food in their eyes. They were feasting on the delicious flesh and blood halfway and were forcefully stopped. This caused them to let out fearsome howls and shrieks as they turned even crazier, rushing forward. The Great Formation began to tremble violently under the onslaught of so many attacks. However, the constellations continued to spin in a great cycle, resembling Tai Chi, and dissipating the force behind all attacks that slammed into the barrier. After some time, the ultimate Killer King finally acted upon seeing the situation. Emptiness. A word of truth rang out, reverberating across space. A formless ripple spread out, wanting to disintegrate everything in the surroundings. A voice speaking of emptiness, all laws vanished as did the multitude of living things. His voice was like a world-destroying wave sweeping across everything. Stone, water, fire, everything became the nothingness, returning to the void. Pipa, pipa. This formless ripple was like a wind gusting through time. It gently breezed past, but everywhere the wind passed by, the things in the surroundings withered and turned into emptiness, dissipating into the void. A huge blank space gradually grew in size, as the formless ripple flowed straight toward the Great Sky Formation. Those death criminals that couldn't evade the ripple quick enough were all unfortunately sacrificed. This was a neutral attack, destroying all that came in contact with it. When the ultimate killing king acted, he didn't even spare his own people. The formless ripple from the word of truth finally slammed into the great formation. The constellations in the star screen blinked rapidly. A moment later, they suddenly exploded as the energy eruption formed a circle. The faces of the exam candidates all flushed red from the genetic energy backlash. Blood seeped from the corners of their mouths, and their countenances paled. Spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the barrier. The barrier was on the verge of collapse. Not good. The Oriental young man's expression greatly changed. He shouted, "If the formation is broken, all of us will die. Everyone, stop holding back. Send me all your energy to maintain and stabilize the formation." His entire body began to glow with energy as the golden bell above the formation spun rapidly, emitting bell chimes as he tried to stabilize the formation. The other exam candidates also knew that they couldn't afford to hold back any longer. If the formation was broken, all of them would be engulfed by the attacks from the aberrations and death criminals. Their chance of survival would be close to nil. They gritted their teeth and didn't continue to hold back. Their genetic energy surged forth in waves as they channeled it into the formation. Even those exam candidates who were knocked down from a heavier energy backlash earlier also stood up and contributed their genetic energy again to stabilize the formation. For a time, the exam candidates were completely united. The light emitted from the formation gathered together like flowing water, rapidly mending the cracks. The formation was like a balloon that deformed due to pressure suddenly bouncing back into shape. The formless ripple was instantly rebounded by the repaired barrier, and a huge blank space appeared everywhere the ripple passed by. What? The death criminals just escaped a calamity, and now, they had to suffer the effects of the ripple once more. They instantly had heavy casualties, as their formations were now in complete chaos. The sedan chair in the center also shattered from the aftershock. From within, a slightly plump figure that looked like a bearded, bespectacled middle-aged uncle wearing oversized clothes appeared. His watermelon belly bulged as his bald head reflected the light. He looked like a greasy middle-aged man, completely not resembling a cultivator at all. Chapter 244, Fishing in Troubled Waters. What? This is the ultimate killer king. Why is he a greasy middle-aged man? This is too lousy, right? It wasn't easy for them to see the true face of the ultimate killer king. Those exam candidates were also completely shocked. This greasy middle-aged man didn't exude the tyrannical bloodthirstiness of the ultimate killer king at all. Feng Lin, who was watching at the side, actually felt wariness in his heart. Cultivators were originally already different from mortals. Their lives had undergone transcendence of a sort, and there were all kinds of people with all kinds of abilities. One must never judge a book by its cover. The more the ultimate killer king looked ordinary, the more fearsome he must be. It must have meant that he was already at a point where he reverted to simplicity, as one with nature. His aura was completely retracted and seemed no different from an ordinary man. If he didn't act earlier, the vast majority of people here probably wouldn't have known that this greasy middle-aged man was a cultivator. This was a sign that he had absolute control over all his power. No wonder the ultimate killer king could summon the wind and call the rain in the southern Milky Way galaxy, and no one had been able to catch him. It wasn't scary that he had killed many people, because if the peak experts of the southern Milky Way galaxy were to act, they could all easily subdue this man. However, he was actually able to conceal his sharpness so well. This was the scariest, most shocking ability of him. There were billions of people in the universe. Who could imagine that the ultimate killer king was a greasy middle-aged man? He. As expected of top geniuses from the solar system, you guys actually forced me to reveal myself. This is not easy at all. How do you all want to die? The ultimate killer king started laughing. His harmless face suddenly contorted as the inner madness in his heart erupted. The demon inside him seemed to have been released. Sharp killing intent and intense coldness engulfed everyone, causing goosebumps to appear on the bodies of the exam candidates. It felt like an Azura had his sight fixed on them. Ultimate Killer King, you don't need to try and scare us. Although the Azura planet is remote, it's still under the observation of the Solar System Coalition government. If you overdid things and kill all of us exam candidates, not only would Azura planet be cleansed by blood, but there wouldn't be any more exam candidates coming here to Azura planet in the future. The exam candidates banded together, facing the death criminals squarely. That golden-haired young man from earlier walked out and spoke without fear. Things were indeed as he had said. The Azura planet was under the governance of the coalition government. Although the death criminals could kill them, they couldn't go too far. After all, this was just a tempering exercise in the form of an exam. They weren't here to be sent to their death. If the Ultimate Killer King really killed all the exam candidates, the experts from the coalition government would never let this rest. In any case, that warship that brought them here was still waiting in the space outside the planet. There was a fragile line of balance. One could almost say that it was a secret agreement between the government and the death criminals. Although it was stated explicitly, this balance did exist. The government sent these exam candidates here to be nutritious food for the criminals. If the criminals grew, Azura planet could be developed further. But it was also a tempering exercise to weed out the weak, leaving behind the truly outstanding candidates. So, how could the government stand to watch if the Ultimate Killer King really killed all of them? In any case, all of these were an open scheme. People knew about it, but they had no way to resist. After all, these were supreme geniuses in the solar system. There were simply too many intelligent people among them. The golden-haired young man with the oriental appearance saw through this point and started to negotiate with the Killer King. He didn't lack guts nor strength. This oriental young man was like the sun among all the other exam candidates, drawing the attention of everyone. Feng Lin also turned his gaze toward him. He could faintly sense that this young man would be his greatest opponent in this exam. This man is named Donghuang Ling from the Golden Crow Space Station. The Golden Crow Space Station is a power established in space, a station that revolved around the sun. Donghuang Ling's vitality stat is over 500. In the information recorded about all the students, he is considered the #1 genius, Yana explained by the side, revealing Donghuang Ling's origins. A space station that revolved around the sun. Feng Lin was silently startled. The sun was considered a mid-grade fixed star with an extremely high temperature. Just the light around it had a temperature of over 6,000 degrees. The temperature at its core was naturally even higher, reaching 1,000,000 degrees. All living things would turn into ashes when moving near to it. There was actually someone building a space station near the sun? But when he thought more about it, things seemed pretty logical. The myriad of living things all required energy. By staying near the sun, they would naturally have an abundance of solar energy, and with mankind's technology, they could turn the initially vile environment into something enjoyable. It was understandable. It was said that the Solar System Coalition government also built their base on a man-made planet near the sun, maintaining the independence of the individual planets. The Ultimate Killer King suddenly laughed after he heard that. You, a mere mid-phase elite cultivator, actually dare to speak in this manner to me? Do you really think I don't dare to act against you? His eyes flared with a crimson light as he stared at Donghuang Ling. A formless pressure gushed forth, pressing down on Donghuang Ling. That Donghuang Ling seemed completely unafraid at all. His golden hair fluttered in the wind, and he appeared like the child of the sun god. Sir, you are the Ultimate Killer King, and naturally wouldn't be afraid of us mere exam candidates. Although you are very famous, If you kill us all, the true experts on the warships stationed outside this planet would surely send experts here to handle this. At that time, not only would your subordinates die, but even you would find it hard to escape with your life. The life of the ultimate killer king is so precious, how can it be comparable to our lives? He smiled faintly and exuded a graceful aura that caused people to be impressed. Even when facing the ultimate killer king, he didn't cower at all. His words actually elevated the status of the killer king, alleviating the danger. The killer king laughed strangely after he had heard that. His gaze flickered. You are a genius. I have killed countless people, and there are very few people who dare to face me directly as you do, or take the pressure radiating from me as easy as you are doing, he praised Dong Huangling. But all of a sudden, he began to laugh sinisterly. Your words are very correct, but what does that have to do with me? As long as I can accomplish my objectives, it's worth it even if all of you exam candidates die here. Do you think these death criminals can threaten me? Even if all of them die, I wouldn't feel any pain in my heart. And as for those armies from the coalition government, none of them has the power to be a threat to me. The killer king coldly laughed, ignoring the expressions on the faces of his subordinates. The fear of the killer king was already engraved deeply in the hearts of these people. They only dared to rage, but they didn't dare to say anything. Dong Huangling's expression sank. He could sense that this ultimate killer king was truly confident in what he said. No one in the warship was powerful enough to threaten him. His mind spun rapidly as he suddenly spoke. What if you can achieve your objective without needing both of our sides to clash with each other? Oh. The killer king had a bored look on his face. What plan do you have? Dong Huangling continued, Killer king, you are using the plan of rousing the tiger to swallow the wolves. Your true objective is to force us to probe the strength level of the mother nest, so you can obtain the secret treasure inside it. As for us, we only want to kill the aberration queen and obtain the points from it. There's clearly no conflict in our goals. Why don't we cooperate? You can take the treasure, and we only want the queen. He actually wanted to negotiate with the killer king. The people in the surroundings were shocked. This Dong Huangling was truly too brazen. One must know that the man he was speaking to was the ultimate killer king, a demon-like existence. By entering deals with him, wasn't Dong Huangling courting death? You know about that secret treasure? The killer king's eyes narrowed into slits. If the secret of the mother nest was exposed, that would be equivalent to touching his reverse scale. A fearsome aura flooded the area, and the pressure intensified. Dong Huangling smiled as he calmly continued, the name Azura planet has to come from something. Although there isn't much news about this treasure, there are still quite a few people who know about this. After that, he didn't continue to speak out loud. His lips moved as he sent voice transmissions to the killer king. The killer king's expression changed. No one knew what Dong Huangling had told him. The killer king cast a deep glance at the golden-haired young man and nodded. All right, let's do things your way then. Those exam candidates were completely stunned. Forming a deal with the killer king. In their perspective, this was simply courting death. Yet, this Dong Huangling actually succeeded. How did he do this? This was also a question Feng Lin wanted to know the answer to, but he wasn't too bothered by it. No matter what the treasure was, he would know once he entered the mother nest. As the heads of the two parties reached an agreement, the cooperation was set in stone. Those exam candidates also didn't have any objections. As long as they had some brains, they knew that they weren't a match for the ultimate killer king. The killer king also controlled his subordinates. The two groups now had clear lines of division. Neither party moved closer to each other. The blood sea continued to churn as aberrations were coming out from it. Go! Whoever can kill the aberration queen will get pointers from me personally. I will guide his cultivation, and allow that person to inherit my position as the Killer King of Azure Planet. The ultimate Killer King howled. There would surely be courageous people within the crowd. When the death criminals heard his words, all of them exploded forth with madness as they lunged forward. The next Killer King of Azure Planet, this position was akin to the controller of a life planet. The temptation was too large. However, things naturally wouldn't be so simple. Feng Lin's eyes shone with a silver light. He activated his spirit vision and could see red strands of baleful aura radiating from the Killer King. The strands of baleful aura seeped into the bodies of the death criminals, causing them to be in a maddened state and lose their rationale. Being able to become the Killer King of Azure Planet naturally was great, but the prerequisite was that they must be alive to enjoy the benefits of this position first. The gigantic scale queen was the most terrifying life form on Azure Planet. How could she be killed so easily? But at this moment, those criminals all seemed to have gone completely crazy. They forgot about the danger and ignored their lives. Is this will control? Feng Lin silently mused. This Killer King seemed to have the ability to control people. This ability was extremely bizarre and resembled hypnosis. If not, given the fact that these death criminals were all tyrannical and lawless individuals who committed heinous crimes, how could they be so obedient to him? Everyone, let's kill the gigantic scale Mother Queen together. We will depend on our capabilities. The Killer King wants the treasure, and we will take the points, Dong Ling spoke. Sure. The other exam candidates replied as they began to enter the sea. They were all elite cultivators and could control the pores on their bodies with ease. It wasn't a problem for them to breathe underwater and dive into the mother nest. We should go in too, Feng Lin spoke. The Greek sisters hesitated. I want to see what tricks Dong Ling and Killer King are playing exactly. I'm also extremely interested in the secret treasure they spoke about. Feng Lin laughed. His gaze then turned to the mother nest, located in the depths of the Blood Sea, as a look of interest flashed in his eyes. He activated the art of transformations, and the three of them silently mixed into the crowd of exam candidates, moving toward the mother nest. The combat prowess of these exam candidates was naturally extremely powerful. Their genetic energy and martial techniques were all at the peak of their peers. They even had weapons to enhance their power. Those water-type aberrations were easily crushed into pieces, becoming points for them to harvest. The army of the Killer King also dove into the water. After some time, an underwater cave appeared before their eyes as endless aberrations came out from it, like schools of fish. Kill our way in. The Killer King and Dong Ling's voice reverberated through the water, commanding everyone to enter. They were like a stampede crushing everything in their way. Destroy. The words of truth spoken by the Killer King caused the entire space to tremble as the poor aberrations exploded. Dong Ling's golden belt spun rapidly, producing formless ripples that destroyed the aberrations from inside out. Clearly, it was a very valuable mythological treasure. Their groups soon entered the nest. They discovered to their surprise that there was actually a space inside. The place was completely devoid of water and filled with air. All forms of aberrations rushed out: messengers, prowlers, guards. These were obviously evolved forms compared to the ones in the large-scale mother nests. Fish scales covered their bodies. Their defenses were even stronger. The exam candidates and death criminals formed a fragile alliance. After they entered deeper into the mother nest, genetic energy gushed forth like tides, forming energy waves that flowed toward the depths. Everywhere the energy waves passed by, the surroundings would crack as fissures opened up on the ground. Those aberrations were transformed into pulps of meat, and a strong acidic scent filled the atmosphere. Feng Lin mixed within them. he silently activated his spirit vision and observed the surroundings. He could see rays of red light flashing from the depths of this mother nest. Far away, there seemed to be a giant ball of red light pulsing with a rhythm, resembling a heartbeat. What is that? Could that be the secret treasure hidden on Azure planet? Feng Lin furrowed his brows. He discovered that the ball of red light's aura seemed to be fused with the Aberration Queen's aura. The treasure. After a few moments, the Killer King also sensed the aura. His eyes narrowed as a wild look appeared on his face. Cracking sounds rang out. All of a sudden, he transformed into a 3 meters tall and muscular man that looked completely different from the greasy middle-aged man he had been earlier. He stomped heavily on the ground, opening up a pathway through the aberrations as he shot forth like an arrow, moving toward the depths of the mother cave. Dong Huangling also followed closely behind. The other exam candidates naturally rushed in that direction too, fearing that they would lag too much behind. After all, the gigantic scale queen was worth a total of 10 million points. Whoever managed to obtain that would undoubtedly become the king of the solar system. None of the exam candidates were willing to watch silently as others hunted the queen. Feng Lin's group of 3 hid among the crowd, planning to fish in troubled waters. No hurry, the gigantic scale queen is extremely terrifying. It wouldn't die so easily. If we enter too early, it would be easy for us to become the targets of a multitude of arrows. We might as well play the role of the oriole at the back while the mantis stalks the cicada. Yana's eyes flashed as she suggested. Feng Lin felt it was very logical. The 3 of them slowed their steps and stayed at the back. Eris took the chance and continued killing the other aberrations, gaining even more points. Very soon, the sound of combat drifted out from the depths of the mother nest. Clearly, the Killer King and the others were currently fighting the Aberration Queen. Feng Lin's group exchanged mutual glances. They decided not to hide anymore. They unleashed their might fully, destroying the aberrations around them as they rushed into the depths. The deeper they went, the more intense the situation was. Corpses of humans and aberrations could be seen everywhere. Among humans, there were exam candidates and death criminals as well. Several of the corpses even had bite marks on them. Human weaklings, you all actually dare to barge into my nest. Simply courting death. A formless spirit wave gushed out, trembling the area. Feng Lin's group finally arrived at the location of combat. To his shock, he saw that the Killer King, Dong Huangling, and their groups were currently fighting against a shocking figure. This figure was that of a female, and her body was so alluring that it could only be described as demonic. She was about 2 meters tall and extremely shapely, with huge twin peaks and well-rounded rear. Her legs were long and powerful, and her entire body was covered in a layer of armor, save for her emotionless eyes. Clearly, no one would mistake her for a human. This gigantic scale mother nest's aberration queen was actually a humanoid? At the center of her chest, a huge ruby-red gemstone could be seen, resembling the eye of a monster. It emitted demonic rays and sparkled with a faint crimson luster, wanting to draw in the souls of those who glanced at it. Chapter 245, Azura Yoga. Gigantic scale aberration queen? How was this queen gigantic? Feng Lin silently felt puzzled. It was understandable for him to feel shocked in his heart when he saw how much the queen resembled a human. This scene truly surpassed his imagination and didn't seem to conform to common sense. But since she was a transcendent creature, there were no such things as logical or non-logical. To his astonishment, Feng Lin discovered that as the strongest creature on Azura planet, the gigantic scale queen had abandoned size and became roughly as large as a human. Her figure was much more nimble and graceful compared to the large-scale queens, and her speed was shockingly quick, producing many after-images as sonic booms rang out in the air. She had a devilish mesmerizing figure. Her armor contained a wild sense of beauty like a lofty queen of the wilds exuding boundless charm. Feng Lin noted this puzzledly. It seemed that no matter which life forms, the higher the stage of life they were at, the more they would resemble humans. He didn't have time to think so much. The gigantic scale queen was currently completely enraged due to people barging into her nest. She was like the most outstanding interstellar warrior. Long and sharp bone blades suddenly grew out of her arms, gleaming with a cold light as she lunged over toward the humans. Her speed was simply too quick, producing countless after-images that surrounded the Killer King, Dong Huangling, and the other exam candidates. Everyone was ganging up on her. Pitiful humans, you actually dare to enter here. Formless spirit waves shook the area as her killing intent gushed forth. This humanoid queen actually could speak human speech and had an intelligence that wasn't inferior to humans. It was completely terrifying. Her spirit force twisted the air and turned corporeal. Formless blades sliced over, and everywhere her spirit force gushed by, destruction could be seen. Boom, boom, boom. Dong Huangling's golden bell was in his hands, and he kept ringing it, causing the chimes to shake the air. The sound waves were formless and ethereal, sweeping out with an imposing momentum and capable of destroying everything in the area. The Killer King's body was bent in strange angles, defying common logic as he assumed a weird posture. He was like a totem that was connected to the profoundness of the universe. A mysterious pressure bore down on everything around him. Ajura Yoga. Lock. His body actually contorted into a position that resembled the Sanskrit word lock, while he chanted the word. Yoga was developed from ancient Sanskrit martial arts. Its purpose was to connect the human spirit with the world, and it contained boundless profound mysteries. Formless shackles appeared in the air, locking down the queen. She wasn't able to shake herself free from them. Good opportunity. Dong Huangling shouted. The golden bell in his hand kept shaking as bell chimes echoed through the air. Golden flames manifested, raising the temperature to an unbearable level and causing the air in the surroundings to evaporate. Tornado wind edge. Earth gravity. Frigid water. The other exam candidates also unleashed their killing techniques as the flood of energy made the interior of the mother nest become something resembling hell in the mortal world. The queen was completely surrounded and injured by the attacks. She was screaming in pain. Suddenly, a spirit force as vast as the ocean erupted out as a material barrier took form, enveloping the queen and isolating the energy attacks. Explode. The vertical pupils of the queen shone with a silver light, and her spirit force erupted forth. The energy attacks from the exam candidates rebounded and instantly knocked the people around her away. The casualties were extremely heavy. Numerous human figures were flung through the air before slamming heavily onto the ground. What? Dong Huangling was shocked. His own great sun golden fire had always swept through his enemies with invincibility. Yet, the queen actually managed to shake herself free from it. But even so, the queen had to face the combined attacks of everyone, and she wasn't doing so well either. Cracks could be seen on her armor as acidic blood flowed from it, causing a vile smell to permeate the atmosphere. Detestable humans, you all actually managed to injure me. The queen's expression turned malevolent. The bone blades on her hand manifested a tornado as she spun in circles. The blade arts were incredibly dense as though nothing could break them apart. Feng Lin was silently astonished as he watched by the side. This was actually a saber-type martial art. This queen had a humanoid body, so she could naturally use ancient martial arts. In addition, her body structure was different from humans. She had many double joints and could move in unpredictable ways, unleashing unfathomable stances. Her entire person floated in the air. she was using her spirit force to support herself. Bone blades flew out from her body and danced unceasingly in the air, revolving protectively around her like birds flying in a circle. The bone blades were incomparably sharp, capable of slicing apart all objects. The moment those exam candidates were slower by a beat, they would instantly be lacerated and transformed into strips of flesh and blood that was hurriedly devoured by the aberrations in the area. Her spirit force could still be felt in the air, causing weariness to appear in the hearts of everyone. It was very tough to defend against something as formless and ethereal as spirit force. Enlarge. Dong Huangling grunted. The golden bell in his hands was a mythological treasure, and it grew larger rapidly, enveloping him like a barrier. The bone blades slashed over, causing ringing sounds to reverberate throughout the area. Sparks flew everywhere, but the bone blades weren't able to break the golden bell's defense. The Killer King once again bent his body in a strange pose. His movements were beyond logic as he called out, "Devil!" A blood-colored chi suddenly flooded the area, engulfing him completely. He was like an Asura in the mortal world as he lunged toward the queen in a crazed manner. His moves were extremely bizarre, but his footwork was like the wind and rain. In the legends, the Asura king danced during the destruction of the world, causing baleful chi to manifest. Those death criminals were influenced by the baleful chi. All of them rushed forward like they had lost their minds. Their eyes turned crimson as they rushed at the queen. If the Killer King was the Asura king, then these people would be his Asura soldiers. Their expressions changed. Their faces turned green and they sprouted fangs as they snarled furiously. But this queen was a true transcendent monster. She was extremely ruthless. Regardless of how fierce the death criminals are, they were easily killed by her, and their flesh and blood littered the ground. The Killer King also found it tough to fight her head-on. He could only depend on his bizarre yoga arts and barely managed to protect himself. But even so, he was battered by the attacks. He howled loudly, "Dong Huangling, if you still don't come out and help me, don't blame me for forgetting our agreement." He made a sinister threat, seeking for help. "Killer King, please calm your anger. The queen is too powerful, and the two of us won't be able to win against her. We need everyone to work together." Dong Huangling leaped out from his golden bell. "Friends, if we don't kill the queen today, none of us will be able to escape. Let's kill her first, before we discuss how to distribute the points." He stared at his surroundings and roared, "Good, let's kill the queen. I'm here to help you. Remember your words." Numerous voices rang out. Those exam candidates also knew that the most critical task now was to kill the queen or all of them would be in dire straits. Another group of exam candidates rushed over, releasing their auras. All of them were at the elite cultivator realm. They didn't hesitate and launched their attacks instantly. Wrath King. Cosmos Ice River. Chapter 246, Stealing Food from the Tiger's Mouth. "You should die." Seeing that he almost got the gemstone yet something blocked him at the last moment, the Killer King was completely enraged as he howled in anger. "You actually dared to return and seize my treasure? Brat, you are dead for sure. No one will be able to save you." When he heard the howl of rage, Feng Lin didn't cower. He actually laughed out loud. "Why wouldn't I dare to return? Anyone can hunt the aberration queen. The Asura heart is also a product of nature, and it doesn't belong to you. In the icy darkness of the universe, how could there be rules of fairness? The weak were merely food for the strong. Strength was everything." Did this Killer King who massacred countless people truly think that Feng Lin would be frightened of him just because of his reputation? How ridiculous. No matter what the method was, as long as it could strengthen oneself, that would be a good method. Feng Lin wouldn't feel any trepidation when he acted. This Azura heart could increase the chances of one's breakthrough. No one would want to miss out on it. Feng Lin's strike sent the Killer King flying away. He turned and immediately shot toward the humanoid queen, who seemed to be on the verge of death. Seeing that Feng Lin was about to succeed, the Killer King's eyes flashed. He grabbed out with his claw, unleashing his attack. Azura Great Capture. The red-colored baleful aura formed a pair of gigantic hands in the air as they stretched out. It looked like a giant wanting to grab an ant and crush it to death. The gigantic hands enveloped the surroundings. Even the air was frozen solid from the might they radiated. This power level was already at the Grand Cultivator realm. Over 20% of the Killer King's body had been transcendized, allowing him to control the power of heaven and earth. This level of might surpassed the imaginations, allowing him to unleash great power with the wave of a hand. Feng Lin felt that the space around him was locked down by the giant palms. They exerted heavy pressure, wanting to crush him into pieces and rendering him immobile. I have to break that Blood Sea altar first, or I won't be able to win. Feng Lin silently mused. The disparity of one great cultivation realm was simply too large. With the augmentation of the Blood Sea altar, the Killer King had transformed into an Azura King. His vitality stat broke past the 1,000 marks, and the vitality pressure made it hard for Feng Lin to resist. The higher the cultivation realm, the greater the disparity in strength would be. It was almost like the difference between heaven and earth. Such a gap was almost impossible to cross. Feng Lin felt a pressure as heavy as a mountain wanting to crush him. Transform. His heart stirred, and he no longer resisted forcefully. His body rapidly turned small as he reached the size of a child about 1 meter tall. His body then spun around like a gyro. As the two palms pressed together, he narrowly avoided them by a hair's distance as he slipped out. Transform again. After breaking out from his predicament, Feng Lin's form grew and became a giant about 5 meters tall. The cudgel in his hand expanded to over 20 meters, becoming an iron pillar. He lifted it and swung it with the force of 10,000 caddies, smashing it down. What? When the Killer King saw that Feng Lin had escaped his grasp, he didn't even have the time to be shocked as the iron pillar could already be seen slamming toward him. His countenance drastically changed. Damn. But everything was already too late. Feng Lin didn't retreat but advanced instead. His heart monkey force gushed forth, reinforcing his strike and increasing his power. As the metal cudgel slammed out, sonic booms echoed through the sky as it ruthlessly smashed upon the Blood Sea altar that was built using the flesh, blood, and bones of the dead. The formation shuddered, blood-colored rays were emitted, forming a layer of protection. However, this was just a supportive type formation, and its might wouldn't be too spectacular. As the giant cudgel smashed down, the altar instantly shattered. The bones, flesh, and blood crumbled apart. No! The Killer King roared. His sturdy frame instantly seemed to resemble a leaking balloon as he rapidly shrank. The blood-colored light seeped out of his body and his aura dwindled. Since the altar had been shattered, his body became as thin as a skeleton due to the backlash. His cultivation base also slipped from the Grand Cultivator realm to the Paragon phase of the Elite Cultivator realm, Grand Completion phase, Late phase. His power fell continuously. Die. The Killer King's heart was filled with hatred for Feng Lin. Boundless killing intent flooded out as he took on a unique yoga posture. Destroy. As the word of truth was spoken, a formless destructive wave rapidly extended outward, wanting to destroy everything completely. Bzz. Feng Lin's heart monkey force surged up, forming a cloudy barrier and blocking the area before him. The powerful wave of destruction slammed into the barrier, shattering it. Moreover, the remnant forces continued blasting toward Feng Lin's arms. At this moment, stone-like cracks actually appeared on his skin. Although he was wounded and he felt pain, Feng Lin didn't grimace. There was a look of contemplation on his face instead. Before this, although the Killer King's might had towered up the sky, the Blood Sea altar had always been his weakness. Feng Lin wasn't wrong on this point. If it was before, Feng Lin could definitely not to block the Killer King's attack head-on. But now, although he was wounded, these were merely external wounds. They weren't able to cause him internal injuries. Rumble. Feng Lin's spirit force blasted out, causing the stones in the area to rise in the air as they shot toward the Killer King, delaying his approach. After that, he continued on his way toward the Aberration Queen. The Queen was now in the state of rapid recovery since the Killer King was no longer pressuring her. Her aura grew increasingly stronger. Upon seeing Feng Lin's ruthless attacks, she screamed, forming a storm with her spirit force that blasted over, wanting to tear Feng Lin's mind into shreds. The center of Feng Lin's brows flashed as his heart monkey force gushed out. It contained a tyrannical and lawless baleful chi. The heart monkey force was considered the evolved form of spirit force. Its quality was higher, and the baleful chi that manifested was even more intense. Everywhere it passed by, all things withered. The storm of spirit force created by the Queen was forced to dissipate. Under the backlash, the Queen clutched her head and screamed in misery. Feng Lin hastened his steps forward. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. If the humanoid queen wasn't on the verge of dying after being battered so badly by the Killer King, Feng Lin would never have a chance to kill her. Since her life was on the verge of being taken, the Aberration Queen naturally wanted to resist. The bone blades on her arms slashed out toward Feng Lin. Feng Lin punched out a single fist that glowed with a jade-like luster, concentrating his heart monkey force on it. The power of his fist grew incomparably terrifying as he smashed down with it. Gotcha! Feng Lin slammed his fist into the Queen's chest, shattering the layer of armor there, causing her chest to sink in. Damn! Put down the Queen. Dong Huangling and the remaining students appeared again. Upon seeing their prey about to be snatched, all of them were completely infuriated. It felt like their wives were being snatched by a nameless stranger. All of them surrounded Feng Lin, preparing to attack. Scram! Feng Lin roared. His spirit force blasted out, manifesting a surge of wild wind that blew toward the exam candidates. Boom! The golden bell chimed as sound waves were emitted in defense. Frigid ice. Black-colored icy water flowed out like rivers, capable of freezing everything. Wrath King. A young monk's body shone with golden light as he transformed, radiating a fiery energy that could burn all lives in existence. With the Queen in his hand, Feng Lin instantly became the target of a multitude of arrows. Everyone was ganging up on him. With him at the center, an intense battle erupted because everyone joined in. To the exam candidates, other than the Azura heart, the humanoid queen was something they definitely must obtain. As long as they had it, their points would far surpass their peers, and they would be able to become the king of the solar system. No one would be willing to give this up. The pressure on Feng Lin greatly increased. Help me block them. After this matter concludes, I will give each of you a medium-scale queen's thumb. Feng Lin's spirit force gushed out as he sent a voice transmission to the two sisters. Seeing that Feng Lin only lacked a single step to success, the Greek sisters also saw an opportunity. They instantly agreed. Tyrant Aura Battle Statue. Eris radiated Tyrant Aura, and a 30 meters tall giant wielding a long spear appeared. It rushed out toward the exam candidates. The exam candidates couldn't evade in time, and were all sent flying. Chi! The gazes of everyone turned over as their expressions changed drastically. In that space of a few seconds, Feng Lin's hand took on the stance of a saber and directly sliced into the queen's body, digging the azure heart out. A formless fluctuation manifested around his right hand, and the corpse of the queen and azure heart were kept inside his pill concoction furnace. Go! Feng Lin roared. Now that he had received the greatest benefits, if he didn't leave now, when would he leave? The three of them cooperated seamlessly. The sisters didn't hesitate as well when they rushed toward the exit. Fleeing? Where can you all flee to? Stealing our points and treasures, and you think you can leave safely? Two cold snorts could be heard. After that, the Killer King and Dong Huangling rushed over as sinister looks could be seen on their faces. The prey that was about to fall in their hands was snatched by another. When had they ever felt such humiliation before? The other students also respectively gathered, surrounding the three of them as their eyes flashed with malicious light. If you are smart, hurry up and hand over the treasures, or you would find it hard to escape even if you have wings. Hand over all your points now. Don't even think about fleeing. The others were also cursing. They were looking at Feng Lin's group as if they were dead men. Feng Lin didn't bother. He spoke in a low voice to the sisters, "After we exit, we should split up and leave." Yana nodded. She understood that they had already become the targets of everyone. If they left together and got surrounded outside, they would never be able to flee. How should we leave? Staring at the wolves and tigers around them, Eris nervously asked. Attack with full force, cover me for a while. Feng Lin decisively spoke. The two sisters could only believe in Feng Lin. Eris's tyrant aura gushed forth as the battle statue transformed once more, reaching a size of over 100 meters in height. It was fully clad in a set of armor, and its features grew clearer. Rumble. The arms of the battle statue were like mountains as they issued punches to all four directions, causing the ground to crack. In the mother nest, the surroundings trembled as rocks fell from the ceiling. Yana's eyes gleamed with a golden light as a scepter appeared in her hand. She waved the scepter, producing sounds that would influence the minds of people. Ding, ding, ding. Boom, boom, boom. The golden bell in Dong Huangling's hands also produced its own sound waves. The two sounds clashed with each other in the air, their power causing the space to warp. All the others frenziedly attacked. Their energy formed into torrents that caused cracks to appear on the battle statue. However, the sisters had already bought enough time for Feng Lin. The metal cudgel in Feng Lin's hand expanded, transforming into a huge pillar that broke apart the ceiling. The seawater instantly flooded in, creating chaos in the mother nest. Go! Feng Lin grabbed the two sisters as he flew up in the air, flying through the hole in the ceiling. Where can you run to? Seeing that the three were escaping, the Killer King coldly shouted and postured his body in the shape of the Sanskrit word disperse. Boom! Eris screamed in pain as her battle statue exploded into pieces. Without its protection, Feng Lin's group of three was completely exposed to the attacks of the crowd. Feng Lin shouted as a layer of jade-like luster covered him. He forcefully took on the attacks, protecting the sisters. Blood seeped from his mouth as he increased his speed, borrowing the momentum from the attacks and instantly leaving the others behind. Hua! Three figures broke the water's surface and flew into the air. Transform. Feng Lin pointed his finger at the sisters, cloaking them in the appearances of male humans. From now on, our cooperation is at an end. Let's split up. The Killer King already has his sights on me. If we stick together, you both will be in danger. Feng Lin didn't waste any more time and directly turned around and left after speaking. The Greek sisters stood where they were and stared at his leaving back. They then sighed but didn't try to hold him back. Because they understood that in such a dangerous situation, they wouldn't be able to provide any help to Feng Lin. Even if they went with him, they would only be burdens and would harm him instead. The two sisters then dove into the sea and began swimming away silently in another direction. After some time, the Killer King broke the water's surface and appeared in the air. He saw Feng Lin's figure in the distance and roared, "Arg!" A moment later, the area was covered in darkness. A giant monster resembling a winged dragon was actually summoned. Its wingspan was at least 20 meters long. Chase! The Killer King leaped on its back and speedily pursued. Dong Huangling and the other exam candidates appeared after that. Sadly, they didn't have the ability to fly and could only howl in fury, completely helpless to do anything. Hua, hua, hua. The intense sounds of wings flapping rang out. Feng Lin turned his head and saw the Killer King mounting the winged dragon and chasing after him. Although the dragon's speed wasn't faster than his cloud soar ability, the dragon's endurance was definitely superior to his. The Killer King's killing intent locked onto Feng Lin, not giving him any chance to escape. The two of them then fell into a chase, with the Killer King pursuing while Feng Lin fleeing. This lasted for a long period of time. Brat, I want to see where you can flee to. Flying must be a genetic ability you unlocked. How long can you use that ability for? The moment you stopped would be the moment of your tragic death. The Killer King coldly laughed, viewing Feng Lin as his prey. Feng Lin didn't bother to reply, but his heart sank after he heard the words. The Killer King was right. Cloudsoar's speed might be fast, but given the fact that he was utilizing its maximum speed now, he could at most sustain this for 3 hours. Once his heart monkey force was exhausted, the Killer King would easily catch up with him. At that time, he wouldn't have any chances left. Since he wouldn't be able to escape, why didn't he fight instead? Ever since he had snatched the Queen and Azura heart, he had already been prepared for this. Feng Lin's gaze swept toward the distance. He saw a mountain peak and decided to descend. Not fleeing anymore? The Killer King laughed malevolently and continued his pursuit. Brat, why are you not running anymore? How dare you steal my treasures? You will definitely die today. His eyes narrowed into slits as he stared fixedly at Feng Lin. A glint of cruelness could be seen in his eyes. It was like he was about to stomp a pitiful bug to its death. Feng Lin was as calm as ever. Fleeing? Why should I flee? Now that there are no other disturbances, we can finally clash head-on in a battle. You want to fight me? The Killer King was taken aback. But at the next moment, it was like he just heard the funniest joke in the world, and he laughed uproariously. Feng Lin calmly looked at him, allowing him to laugh as much as he wanted to. The Killer King smiled sinisterly. The ignorants are fearless. Moreover, you actually dare to provoke me. Do you know why my title is the Ultimate Killer King? Among all the martial arts in the universe, all of them can be countered. Only what exists in the heart cannot be broken. I've given you the clue to the true meaning behind my title. Killing people means killing their hearts. Chapter 247, Killing People's Hearts? Killing hearts. The words of the Ultimate Killer King were like knives that wanted to pierce through Feng Lin's soul, slaughtering his heart. He laughed gloomily. Among all the martial arts in the universe, all of them can be countered. Only what exists in the heart cannot be broken. No matter how powerful a technique is, it cannot be compared to killing the hearts of people. As the medical technology is already extremely well developed, as long as medical treatment was applied in time, all kinds of grievous injuries would be healed. There's only one flaw: if the heart of a person died, no medicine would be able to save him. Even if his body was saved, he would be nothing more than a zombie. So what does it take to kill the hearts? I've massacred countless people, How can you even begin to comprehend the concept of killing hearts? And now you actually dared to fight me, truly courting death. Feng Lin laughed coldly. The fame of the ultimate killer king spreads through the world, and I have long since known about it. If you are in your peak condition, I will definitely not dare to antagonize you. But you right now, how many percentages of strength do you have left? Machim? After the sore spot in his heart was poked, the Killer King's eyes narrowed. A cold smile appeared on his face. Do you think that I could massacre so many people is due to my cultivation alone? Although the southern Milky Way galaxy is the weakest region, there are still many powerful cultivators there. Above me, there are still grand cultivators, adepts, and elite adepts, they are countless in number. But why can't they massacre millions? But I managed to do so. Although I'm currently not at my peak stage, my capabilities are more than sufficient to kill you. Oh. Feng Lin calmly smiled. Whether you can do so or not, everything will be made clear once we fight. He no longer wasted words with this person. In any case, they already had a grudge to the point of either you die or I die. Since this was the case, why talked so much? Feng Lin was the weaker one. Yet, he took the initiative to rush forward. The metal cudgel in his hand waved and transformed into countless cudgel images that enveloped the Killer King. Azura tossing the elephant. The hands of the Killer King clenched as he slammed out with them. The two of them clashed and both respectively retreated. Feng Lin was forced to retreat by 10 steps while the Killer King only retreated by 3 steps. Feng Lin wasn't shocked, but was pleasantly surprised instead. If the Killer King was in his peak state, he would surely not be a match for him in a head-on confrontation. In fact, he wouldn't have any chance at all. But now after exchanging a blow, although he was in an inferior position, the disparity wasn't that great between them. The Bloodsea altar of the Killer King was already destroyed, and he was weakened to the max due to the backlash. Under his heavy injuries, there was no way the Killer King would be able to fight a protracted battle. Hence, Feng Lin's chance of victory greatly increased. Heart Monkey Empowerment. Feng Lin activated the Heart Monkey Force to strengthen himself. With the increase in power, he leaped into the air and unleashed an ordinary-looking stance named the Strength Splitting Apart Mhua. It wasn't dazzling at all, using brute force as its base. This was a clash of strength against strength. As expected, the burden on their bodies was extremely huge as they attempted to probe the injuries of each other. Lock. The Killer King adopted a yoga posture that contained the Tao of the universe. Formless shackles appeared in the air, causing a restriction effect on Feng Lin and stiffening his movements. Break. Feng Lin's body bent like an arched bow, stretched to the max as he bounced back up with incredible might. Kacha. The formless shackles broke apart. The Killer King's yoga attack was broken. This locking technique that had always been effective up until now had actually failed. Yet, Feng Lin didn't feel too surprised that he could break the attack. No matter how strong a power was, there would always be a limit. Heart Monkey Force used idealistic force to influence the material world. It allowed him to transform, possess extreme knowledge about astrology and geographic, and even shift the position of the stars. If it was strengthened to a certain extent, there was nothing it couldn't do. Feng Lin used the Heart Monkey Force to empower himself, and his strength was magnified by 3 times. How could his movements be so easily bound? And the Killer King was already injured heavily. His strength was far from his peak, he only had about 1/3 of his strength remaining. Originally, Feng Lin's strength couldn't be compared to the ultimate Killer King at all, but right now, after his strengthening and the weakening of the Killer King, they were roughly equal. Actually, Feng Lin even seemed to possess an advantage. The Killer King was a major character at the grand completion phase of the elite cultivator realm. If there weren't any appropriate opportunities, how would Feng Lin be able to kill him? Although Azura planet was a famous hell planet in the southern Milky Way galaxy, given how large this planet was, how could there be no cultivation resources here? Leaving aside the fact that the Killer King was supposedly a prisoner here, in truth, everyone knew that he was the boss of this planet. So, how could he not have any wondrous treasures on him? The examiners set the second round of exams on this planet, using the death criminals and aberrations to test the exam candidates. But on the other hand, were they not using the exam candidates to kill these death criminals? These death criminals might have some cultivation resources on them. If the exam candidates could kill them, they would be able to gain the resources of the death criminals and use the resources to enhance their cultivation. Those examiners did this because they wanted the students to experience a bloodbath and nurture their baleful auras, eliminating the weaker ones, leaving only true geniuses behind. Those that looked strong on the appearance but weak on the inside would be weeded out. It was impossible for them to survive. Although the technology of humanity was very developed, and they occupied the entire Milky Way galaxy, but in truth, this amount of territory was merely considered a drop of water in the vast ocean of the universe. There were countless terrifying races viewing humanity as prey. Countless streams of currents flowed in the dark due to the difference of interest of various powerful parties. Danger was everywhere. Only geniuses who had been tempered by the bloodbath of 1,000 battles could be considered the real geniuses to humanity. If not, no matter how high their cultivation bases were, as long as their will wasn't strong enough, they wouldn't dare to fight to the bitter end against the alien races. Ultimately, they could only be considered slightly stronger trash. Hence, the hidden meaning behind the second round of exams was truly thought-provoking. Suppress. The metal cudgel smashed down, aiming for the Killer King's head. However, the ultimate Killer King adopted another posture. His arms lifted like a divine being propping up the sky, actually managing to halt the cudgel's momentum. Feng Lin discovered that the Killer King's body seemed to be a pipe that channeled the force of his cudgel into the ground. Right now, there was completely no power in his cudgel strike. Yoga was an ancient martial art. It classified the body into 3 meridians and 7 arteries, allowing the user to connect with heaven and earth. In the legends, one could even connect themselves with a god and obtain divine might. In Sanskrit mythology, the Azura king assiduously cultivated yoga for the sake of fighting against the heavenly gods. In the end, he finally understood the true essence of yoga, and his divine might increased greatly, allowing him to be victorious in that war. The Killer King was using Azura yoga, which allowed him to connect with the majestic force of heavens and earth. It was extraordinarily profound. Feng Lin's cudgel danced in the air, creating numerous shadows with his immense speed and strength. The Killer King adopted postures after postures, occasionally bending his back, spinning like a top, and standing erect like a pillar. This martial art had a completely different concept from Huaxia's martial arts, yet its defensive prowess was strong, and its offensive prowess was bizarrely powerful. Bang, bang, bang. The body of the Killer King was as tough as steel. He dared to fight against the metal cudgel with his flesh, causing the deafening sounds to ring out upon impact. Feng Lin also had no way to capitalize on his advantage, despite him being slightly stronger. After the Blood Sea altar was shattered, the Killer King's constitution was heavily injured. However, his ferociousness didn't diminish and he focused his attention on defense. It wouldn't be easy for Feng Lin to break through his stance. His cudgel arts were fearsome as he depended on brute force to break the defense, but he wasn't able to do so. Since this was the case, why didn't Feng Lin concentrate his strength into a single point and try to pierce the Killer King's defense? Feng Lin's heart stirred. The cudgel in his hand transformed into a long sword. Immortal slaying sword imprint. His wrist flicked as the entire strength of his body gathered on one point, before erupting forth with explosive might. This seemingly ordinary sword actually contained profound intents within it. The muscles on his finger moved. And with the empowerment of the heart monkey force, the sharpness of the sword was amplified and even contained a hint of divine charm of the legendary immortal slaying sword. The sword Dao was always the most offensive kind of Daos. The sword stabbed out, containing an absolute slaughtering might that could crush everything. This sword. Fear arose in the Killer King's heart. The power of this sword was extremely terrifying. Its speed was so fast that the Killer King had no way to evade. His eyes narrowed as he adopted even more yoga postures. His body curled up and his palms were in the position of being ready to be pressed together, resembling two huge doors about to close as he attempted to block the external attack. Bang! His palms actually managed to catch the sword. Chi! The sword force was obstructed, but the piercing aura managed to penetrate the Killer King's shoulder, completely crippling one of his arms as fresh blood flowed. The Killer King's facial features were scrunched together. He felt intense heart-piercing pain. Since he managed to wound the Killer King, Fenglin didn't intend to stop. He used the immortal slaying sword imprint to control the sword, allowing the sword force to expand. Numerous sword flowers manifested. A sword light flashed, leaving behind numerous wounds on the Killer King's body. His blood dripped from his wounds, dyeing the ground red. "Brat, you actually injured me," the Killer King roared. Fenglin ignored him. Villains would always mouth off before their death. Why is there still a need to talk nonsense now? Kill. Fenglin leaped into the air, performing the sword dance of the white ape. His techniques were marvelous to the extreme as he pierced the sword toward the Killer King again. The Killer King had no way to block it. He hurriedly retreated and was in a very sorry sight. His aura was clearly weakened. Just when Fenglin was preparing to finish him off, the Killer King suddenly laughed in a low voice. "Do you know? The path I'm walking on is the Azura King mythology path. The Azura gene is a variation-grade transcendent gene and has the ability to transform the user into a true Azura." With his life on the line, the Killer King didn't seem to be worried at all. He was actually laughing. Fenglin's heart tensed. Did the Killer King still have something up his sleeves? He didn't hesitate and instantly slashed down with his sword. But all of a sudden, the ground trembled as numerous red-colored stone pillars rose from the ground, trapping Fenglin within and forming a giant formation. "Brat, do you know why I'm known as the ultimate Killer King? Because everyone I've killed was tortured to death by me. No matter how good the medical technology is, nothing can save them. Next, you will also face boundless terror and die a miserable death while howling, struggling and filled with despair inside the hell I've created for you." The ultimate Killer King laughed sinisterly. Sounds of souls wailing could actually be heard, wanting to pull Fenglin inside this hell and forever barring his reincarnation. Fenglin's heart involuntarily pounded. However, he wasn't distracted from his goal and continued to attack the Killer King. No matter what tricks the Killer King wanted to use, as long as he killed the Killer King before he could finish his move, no matter how powerful the Killer King's ultimate technique was, it would also be useless. After all, a technique was not a living existence, and only living humans could execute it. If the Killer King died, everything would be solved. A sword thrust out as fast as white lightning, aiming for the Killer King's throat. Ha ha ha. The Killer King abruptly moved, coincidentally dodging Fenglin's killing strike. His steps quickened as he violently stomped on the ground. The bloody baleful aura continuously gathered as the wails of ghostly souls could be heard in the atmosphere, growing louder and louder. The earth trembled and split apart. Black chi and smoke gushed out, filling the area and causing the sky to turn completely dark. The stone pillars around him started trembling, causing a blood-like hue to paint the dark skies red. The aura enveloped the entire area he was in. The surroundings became a terrifying domain as the world changed. Streaks of blood could be seen arcing through the sky. Within the domain, no other living creatures existed. An aura of death was prevalent here. Feng Lin felt as though his sense of space and time was turned topsy-turvy. His heart sank to the bottom, and when he recovered his senses, he discovered that the area he was in had completely changed. He was now in hell. The stone pillars were still around him. It appeared like the King Yama's Hall of Hell had ascended to the mortal world. Welcome to my world, the 18 levels of hell. Chapter 248, My name shall not exist in the book of life and death. 18 levels of hell? Terrifying sinister laughter echoed all around him from the depths of hell, accompanied by the squealing and wailing of ghosts. Feng Lin turned his gaze ahead only to see darkness everywhere. Within the darkness, he could see many malevolent faces with crimson eyes staring at him. Their mouths were wide open as they breathed in the darkness. They were like demons enduring countless suffering, unable to qualify for reincarnation. The shrill cries from them would involuntarily cause the hearts of those who heard them tremble. Is this an illusion formation? Feng Lin glanced at the stone pillars that were currently emitting a red and black-colored qi as he sank into contemplation. No wonder he kept feeling that something was wrong with this ultimate Killer King. Even if the Killer King was injured, it was impossible for his strength to decline so quickly. So it turned out that the Killer King had been silently laying out this formation. In that case, the vast amount of blood he shed and the way he allowed it to enter the ground, they were all part of his plot. As expected of the ultimate Killer King, such schemes and methods when it came to killing truly made it so that no one could be the slightest bit careless when dealing with him. Feng Lin had already been very cautious, yet he was still in this current situation. This formation borrowed the power of heaven and earth, and was already completed. An imposing might bore down on him, dragging him to hell and cutting off all paths of escape. Boom! The darkness churned while the earth and mountain trembled. Feng Lin inclined his head only to see a green demon with flashy fangs rising before him. Its body was as large as a mountain, and there was a crown made of white bones on its head, peering down on him. Brat! I want to see how you can flee. The 18 levels of hell judge all mortals. Now that you are dragged into hell, your soul shall be subjected to countless torments, and your will shall be ground to pieces until it dissipates. Once your heart collapses, no matter how advanced medical technology is, you would never be saved. After your death, your cultivation base shall become nutrients for my cultivation to advance. This is the fate of everyone who died by my hands, and you won't be an exception. Killing people and killing hearts, this is the reason why I'm known as the ultimate Killer King. Because I'm the only one with such a unique ability. The devil laughed maniacally. This was naturally the incarnation of the Killer King in hell. 18 levels of hell? Do you really think that you are the Yama King? Despite the dangerous situation, Feng Lin was able to remain calm. He was trying to drag things up so he could find a way to break the crisis. Machim? You actually know of the myths of Yama King? Seems like I have underestimated you. The ultimate Killer King had a look of confidence on his face, feeling that his victory was near. He smiled and stared at Feng Lin, who was like an ant struggling for his life. He then spoke, Do you know that I'm walking on the Azura God mythological path? The evolutionary formula for the Azura gene equals Baleful gene X6 plus Slaughter gene X7 plus Spirit gene X5. The pinnacle of this path is none other than the Yama King, who controls the 18 levels of hell that span across tens of thousands of worlds. In any case, in this place, I'm none other than Yama himself. His voice was like thunder from the dark sky. It was like Yama sitting inside the twisted Death City, announcing Feng Lin's fate of death. Feng Lin's heart chilled. This Killer King even told him about the evolutionary formula of the Azura gene. What did this indicate? This meant that the Killer King would definitely kill him today, so Feng Lin would have no chance to divulge any secrets. An illusion formation? The Azura gene needed a spirit/mental type gene as parameters before it could evolve. Feng Lin silently mused. Since this is an illusion, it must be targeting my mind. The Killer King's mistake was revealing the formula for the Azura gene, allowing Feng Lin to be clear about this. Did the Killer King really treat him as a soft persimmon that could do nothing but allow the Killer King to squeeze? So what if you are the Yama King? You must know that I'm the great sage equal to the heavens. Feng Lin laughed in a low voice. What? Seeing that despite Feng Lin being in a desperate situation yet he didn't panic, the Killer King frowned. He didn't clearly hear what Feng Lin had said. Boom. With Feng Lin at the center, a raging storm of spirit force gushed out, blasting against the dark illusionary environment. The space here started to warp like it was under immense stress. You've also awakened the spirit gene? The ultimate Killer King was shocked. Since this is the case and you also know about the evolutionary formula of my Azura gene, it's impossible for me to let you off. Otherwise, you would surely cause great trouble for me in the future. Stop talking crap. The grudge between us has long since escalated to the point where only one of us can survive. What's the use of talking about all this now? If you want to fight, let's fight. Feng Lin coldly snorted. His spirit force gushed out in its entirety, wanting to blast the space apart. Courting death. The Killer King's eyes narrowed. His spirit force also gushed out, causing the illusion formation to change and rapidly stabilize down. The blood sea churned wildly as countless wailing little demons climbed, crowding together with all sorts of instruments in their hands. First level, hell of tongue ripping. A cold voice snorted. The scenes around Feng Lin changed. Without realizing it, he discovered that he was now tied to an iron pillar with many iron shackles binding his movements. Those little demons were only at the size of a fist. They crawled all over him like ants and wrenched his mouth open, piercing iron hooks into his tongue to drag it out. A heart-piercing pain caused him to tremble. Feng Lin's face was flushed as he struggled to retract his tongue. Audacious sinner, how dare you resist the Yama King's punishment? Fellows, let's go and rip his tongue out together, a tiny red demon roared. The other little demons flooded over, howling in excitement. They grabbed Feng Lin's tongue and pulled at it with force. Their combined strength was large enough that Feng Lin found it hard to resist. His tongue was pulled out ruthlessly and extended to 1 meter long. These little demons had small knives, forks, halberds, all of them sliced at his tongue, causing fresh blood to flow. The pain was indescribable. Feng Lin's will started to crumble. But all of a sudden, another cold snort akin to the howls of demons rang out. Second level. Hell of scissors. The earth cracked as gigantic scissors appeared from the pit below, cutting the little demons into pieces. Feng Lin was also cut into 1,000 parts. After this, the scene kept on repeating. The countless number of scissors here dissected him again and again as he suffered the torment. Third level, hell of trees of knives. At the next moment, Feng Lin discovered that he was tied to an iron tree. Each leaf was like a sharp blade, piercing him from the back. He was hung on the top of the metal tree, and as a devilish wind blew past, his bones and flesh dispersed when the intense sun shone upon him, drying him out completely. Ninth level, hell of oil cauldrons. The oil in the cauldron was heated up by blazing flames, crackling with wild fervor. Feng Lin's clothes were stripped off, and he was tossed into the oil cauldron naked. Boundless hot oil surrounded him, his skin cracked as his flesh was deep-fried. He was turned over and over as the splattering sounds of boiling oil could be heard. He was in incredible pain and felt that his flesh was completely cooked. 10th level, Hell of the Pit of Cattle. Feng Lin was then tossed into a giant crater with 10,000 bulls rushing over. The bodies of the bulls were covered in flames. Anything that came in contact with them would be burned into ashes. Their horns were like spears, and they rushed toward Feng Lin, trampling him under their hooves. Feng Lin descended into the 18 levels of hell and suffered all sorts of cruel tortures. His body was destroyed again and again, as expected of a cultivator that has awakened the spirit gene. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to last until the 9th level, but you have already reached the 10th. I want to see how long you can endure. You should know that each successive level would be more terrifying than the one before it. 11th level, Hell of Boulder Crushing. 12th level, Hell of Mortars and Pestles. 13th level, Hell of the Pool of Blood. The Killer King spoke repeatedly. Huge rocks fell from the ceiling, crushing him. Feng Lin's body was then placed inside a grinder that continuously piled on the pressure. He was then knocked into a pool of blood where numerous hands dragged him under. As he sank into the pool of blood, the ghostly wails resounded in his ears. Feng Lin's will was crushed. He sank unceasingly into a situation of unprecedented danger, into eternal darkness. The sense of an immense crisis arose in his heart. He understood that he was treading on a very thin line between life and death. Things felt as illusory as a dream, and all dreams were as flimsy as froth and bubbles. Feng Lin muttered chants continuously under his breath as he tried to gather his will, wanting to awaken from the nightmare. However, that boundless darkness and cold kept pressing down on his psyche, dragging him down into the darkness. At this moment, a faint light suddenly appeared before Feng Lin's eyes. This light was very dim, but it still managed to illuminate a part of the boundless darkness slightly. He instinctively drew nearer to the light, and soon after that, a familiar scene appeared before him. He was inside a majestic-looking great hall. Yama King, the Soel Sun, referring to himself, attained immortality and is equal to the heavens. My longevity is the same as the 3 realms, and I've also escaped the cycle of the 5 elements. Why did someone try to restrain me and bring me here? A thunderous voice rang out as a golden-furred monkey wielding a metal cudgel spoke. He was brazenly sitting in the Yama King's treasured throne as he gnashed his teeth. Immortal, please calm your rage. There are many people in the world with the same surnames and names. Maybe our guards brought in the wrong person, the Yama King spoke in terror. Nonsense. Nonsense. As the saying goes, if the officials are corrupt, so are the guards under them. Quickly take out the Book of Life and Death for me to check. I want to see if I'm inside there. The monkey didn't believe his words and howled in anger. His metal cudgel instantly expanded, shining with a golden light as he waved it once, causing the entire Yama Hall to tremble as several pillars shattered. The Yama King was so frightened that he was trembling. Quick, quick, quick. Judge, give me the Book of Life and Death. One of the judges hurriedly took out a giant book. The monkey grabbed it and flipped the pages. In the book, there were different classifications of the various races: winged bugs, furry bugs, insects, scaled animals, mammals, avian beasts, etc. No matter what, there were pages reserved for each type of being. The monkey flipped through the pages and to his shock, he discovered his name in one of the pages and there was a passage written there: Sun Wukong's true form is a heaven birthstone monkey. His lifespan is said at 342 years old, and he shall die a peaceful death. The monkey instantly flew into a rage. I've been taken as a disciple by a grandmaster of the Tao, and has already attained my Tao, becoming an immortal. Why is my name in the Book of Life and Death? quickly bring me a pen. This, the Yama king and judges glanced at each other as unsightly looks appeared on their faces. Machim? Could it be that you two dare to lie to this Oel son? The golden eyes of the monkey flared, glaring at the Yama king. It was like as soon as the Yama king didn't obey him, he would instantly turn this hell upside down. Yama king had a bitter look on his face. He hurriedly commanded the judge to bring a judge pen over. After the monkey received the pen, he instantly crossed out his name. Not only that, but he began to turn the book of life and death into a scribble book. He flipped through the pages and crossed out things, even tearing some of the pages into shreds. From now onwards, the lives and deaths of the various monkey species will not be controlled by the underworld. The monkey directly turned and left after crossing out the names, not saying anything more. When the Yama king saw the shredded pages, he was so angered that his body involuntarily trembled. Men, that demonic monkey destroys the supreme treasure of the underworld. Capture him and send him to the 18 levels of hell. Roar. Shriek. Howl. Ox-faced and horse-faced soldiers, Asura and Yikshas, countless ghosts and demons, all rushed out like the tides, surrounding the monkey. Good that all of you are gathered here. I've long since been very unhappy about the underworld. Today, I'm going to flip the 18 levels of hell topsy-turvy. The monkey didn't seem to be afraid as he coldly laughed. With a somersault, the countless strands of golden fur on his body manifested into the weaker clones of himself. Each of them had a metal cudgel in their hands as they rushed at the underworld army. He he he. The monkey laughed coldly, blinking in and out of different places and crushing the underworld army with his power alone. As he swept out with his cudgel, his clones did the same. The demon and ghost army was utterly defeated, and their souls were injured to the point of being scattered. They no longer had a chance of reincarnation. The underworld began to crack as a scene of apocalypse appeared. Bridge of helplessness, break. River of forgetfulness, dry up. 3 live stone, shatter. The moment the monkey decided to attack, he naturally held nothing back. He was tyrannical and lawless, just like the embodiment of destruction. He was shattering everything there was to shatter inside the underworld. The underworld army was completely annihilated. Quick! Go get Judge Tway, get him to invite Bodhisattva Ksitigarbha. Upon seeing how powerful the monkey was, the Yama king shouted with fear. The monkey was completely venting his anger. Everywhere he went, destruction followed. The prestigious and majestic underworld turned into ruins. Vile monkey, don't be impudent. A thunderous voice rang out through the air. The speaker descended from the air, seated on a lotus throne. The lotus throne expanded and became as large as the sky as it crashed down on the monkey. The monkey instinctively used his cudgel to block. Boundless Buddhistic might bore down on him. The weight of the entire 18 levels of hell wanted to crush him. The monkey struggled as he let out roars of anger before the roars faded into silence. Only after a long time did the Yama king and various judges dare to come nearer. Is the demonic monkey finally subdued? They then knelt and faced the sky. Many thanks, Bodhisattva Ksitigarbha, for using your boundless power to suppress the monkey and saving the underworld. Amitba. Yama king, you are too polite. If hell isn't emptied of suffering mortals, I shall not ascend to Buddhahood. The hell affects the chances of this little monk becoming a Buddha. This is only something I ought to do. An imposing voice rang out from a screen of golden light. Bodhisattva is merciful. Lord Ksitigarbha is merciful. Cheering could be heard in all parts of the underworld. But when all lives in the underworld knelt and thanked the Bodhisattva, a huge tremor shook the earth as many constructs on the ground crumbled. What? All the gods, demons, and ghosts glanced around in confusion. At the depths of the 18th level, they only saw a huge metal pillar extended upward with incredible speed, penetrating through all 18 levels. The situation was in complete chaos as a hole opened up in the dark underworld. A figure with golden fur shot out and became a beam of golden light, escaping from the hole. The Yama King, stared at the underworld that had transformed into ruins. His body trembled violently from what he was seeing. Within the screen of golden light, a voice of anger rang out, causing the underworld to shudder. This vile demon is too obstinate, even this little monk has no way to subdue it. Let's join together and report this to the heavenly court. We'll get them to dominate and suppress this damnable demonic monkey. Chapter 249, Wreaking Havoc in the Underworld. So this was the case. The light dissipated and the ancient mythological scene shattered before him, transforming into points of starlight before they faded away. The familiar situation he was facing now had awakened a part of the hereditary memories stored in his genes. He saw the scene of how Sun Wukong wreaked havoc in the underworld. His consciousness returned to his original body. He was still sinking inside the blood pool as countless ghostly hands wanted to drag him down. Sharp ghostly wails echoed in his ears. The ghosts and demons here began to claw and bite him, wanting to tear him apart and devour him. The fear of death isn't enough to shake my heart. Feng Lin had a look of enlightenment on his face as he slowly sat in a cross-legged position. All the fear, despair, and panic that was present in his heart earlier was completely swept away. The state of his heart became as calm as water. However, below this calmness, an ancient baleful aura was being suppressed. This baleful aura was lawless and tyrannical. Once it erupted forth, a towering wave would be created. There was boundless terror in the atmosphere, bladed mountains, sea of fires, cauldrons with fiery oil, thousands and millions of swords and blades, all of these now weren't able to shake his heart. If one's heart was strong enough, they could shift mountain, overturn seas, subdue demons, destroy gods, shift the stars, and flip the heavens. The inextinguishable tyrannical qi in his heart woke Feng Lin up. Only now did he understand the true essence of the heart monkey force. The heart monkey's will was like an unbridled horse that wanted to gallop with no restraint. The heart monkey force wasn't simple idealistic energy that could affect the material world. It also contained countless possibilities and transformations. It represented an invincible state of heart that had neither fear nor worries. It could struggle free from all bindings and suppress all distracting thoughts. Without thought, how could there be fear? He would advance courageously. In the primordial era, even the might of the heavenly court and underworld was unable to dominate the great sage equal to the heavens. He alone wreaked havoc everywhere and flipped the heavens and earth upside down. This was the terrifying aspect of the heart monkey. A surge of ruthless aura filled his heart. Feng Lin abruptly opened his eyes as a flash of golden light shone. It was like an unsheathed divine sword, breaking apart the darkness and quelling the chaos. What's with those eyes? The ultimate killer king transformed into the Yama King and sat in the dark sky. His figure was locked on by the golden light, and he felt as though a terrifying existence was staring at him. His body turned stiff as he started to tremble. The Azura gene was evolved from the spirit gene, baleful gene, and slaughter gene. The killing intent in his heart was naturally intense. But at this moment, this surge of ruthless aura completely dominated his mind and heart. The Killer King didn't even dare to think about resisting. Damn! After returning to his senses, the Killer King howled with rage. His anger rose to the sky, wanting to burn everything around him into ashes. The feeling of being looked down upon by that golden gaze felt even worse than being killed. He felt extremely angered and sullen in his heart. As the ultimate Killer King, when had anyone ever dared to use such a gaze to stare at him? Brat, You didn't die yet? I want to see how long can you struggle for. The ultimate killer king roared. At the next moment, the hell suddenly changed. 14th level, hell of the wrongful dead. 15th level, hell of dismemberment. 16th level, hell of volcano. A sea of flames occurred, 10,000 blades shot over, and Feng Lin was even transformed into a beast of burden. All sorts of punishment were heaped onto him. He was wounded and forced to recover as the cycle continued repeatedly. He was in constant torment, not able to live or die. In fact, living like this was worse than death. However, Feng Lin guarded his original state of heart. He wasn't bothered by the external punishment as he had seen through the illusion. No matter how terrifying the things he had to experience in this hell were, everything didn't exist in reality. After understanding the true essence of the heart monkey, his spirit force finally surged to a level higher than the ultimate killer king. All the illusions and terror being generated were nothing but clouds of mist passing through his vision. They were no longer effective against him. What? After a long time, when the ultimate killer king realized that Feng Lin was basically not affected, he roared wrathfully. He had no idea that Feng Lin's state of mind had changed drastically. 17th level, hell of mills. 18th level, hell of sawing. A stone mill as large as a mountain appeared before him. Feng Lin was as tiny as an ant before it, and he was crushed into meat paste, his blood flowing everywhere. Wooden piles were covered with thorns, which pierced into his flesh, tying him in a posture that resembled this shape. Many evil demons had saws in their hands as they started to saw him apart. The sharp steel ground against his bones, creating a scalp-numbing sound effect. The 18 level of hells, a total of 18 cruel punishments. Feng Lin passed through them one by one, and the cruel tormenting cycle repeated thousands of times. But other than him being a little mentally fatigued, there seemed to be no other injuries at all. His heart was as tough as a rock, nothing could move it. Is that all? Feng Lin coldly laughed after he had experienced everything. What? The ultimate killer king was extremely shocked as a strong sense of unease rose in his heart. If that is all you have, I have to confess that I'm disappointed. Feng Lin laughed coldly as he suddenly spoke another word, transform. His body then abruptly expanded like an inflated balloon. 3 meters, 10 meters, 50 meters. In an illusion created by spirit force, there were no restrictions on any laws of reality. Countless possibilities were present here, and one could become anything their hearts desired. Feng Lin summoned his spirit force and actually became a golden-furred monkey of 100 meters tall. His eyes gleamed with a golden light as he crushed the wooden pile he was bound to, shaking himself free. Shatter for me. With a wave of his hand, a resplendent golden cudgel appeared. A row of words could be seen on it. Rui golden cudgel, weight, 6,750 kilograms. As he swept out with the cudgel, it changed shape and became a heavenly pillar. The momentum and the force of the strike caused the surroundings to collapse. Boom! The 18 levels of hell broke apart. Feng Lin was like the heart monkey that had just broken free of his imprisonment. The ruthless aura in his heart was unbridled, and he was currently waving his metal cudgel around, venting his emotions. The powerful illusion of hell was actually about to crumble apart. No matter how much terror was in here, it wasn't able to confuse his heart. The tyrannical and ruthless aura in his heart couldn't be soothed. Only by destroying everything and breaking apart this hell of darkness that had existed in ancient times would he finally feel free. Feng Lin transformed into a world-destroying demon ape, wrecking everything before him. You should die. The Killer King felt extreme anger. If it wasn't for his fatigue after having fought against the humanoid queen and his injured constitution, how could this brat dare to act so brazenly? Feng Lin was still wantonly causing destruction and wreaking havoc in the underworld. This illusion of hell would break apart sooner or later. Once Feng Lin had broken free, it wouldn't be so easy for the Killer King to trap him inside another spirit-layered illusion again. Damn it. The ultimate Killer King didn't expect Feng Lin to be so troublesome to handle. He suddenly moved, deciding to join the fight personally. His horns pointed to the sky, his expression was extremely malevolent, and his body was as large as a mountain. The Killer King's body soared, blotting out the sky and causing everywhere to be shrouded in darkness. Die! A pair of giant fists blasted out and Feng Lin could only sweep his cudgel outward to block. Under the clash of the two violent energies, his body was flung through the air like a cannon. Boom, boom, boom. The Killer King's methods were extremely merciless. After gaining an advantage, he continued to attack, wanting to use his fist to pound Feng Lin into meat paste. Feng Lin's body was already large enough. But before the Azura body of the Killer King, he still seemed as tiny as an infant. The difference in strength and physique is tough to overcome, in that case. Transform again. Feng Lin roared. Wind flowed around him as he suddenly expanded from 100 meters to 300 meters, at the same height as the Killer King. He brandished his metal cudgel and rushed over. Feng Lin had personally seen the scene where Sun Wukong had wreaked havoc in the underworld. With a cudgel in his hand, he stood up against an entire army consisting of tens of thousands of ghosts and demons and ripped through them with invincibility. Although Feng Lin only watched from the side and didn't manage to fully comprehend the divine charm in Sun Wukong's moves, it was sufficient to deepen his comprehension of the great sage cudgel arts. With a wave of his cudgel, its shadows filled the sky and engulfed the giant Azura. Bang, bang, bang. His cudgel arts were exquisite to the extreme, containing countless transformations. It smashed heavily against the Killer King's head, knocking him down to the ground. Good chance. Feng Lin lunged over as he continued to attack, causing the 300 meters tall Azura giant to tremble violently as the Killer King screamed in pain. How can I be defeated in the hands of a brat like you? The Killer King was suppressed by Feng Lin's ferocious attacks and had no chance to retaliate. He could only howl in anger. 3 heads 6 arms. The Killer King felt extremely sullen. With a vigorous shake, he transformed into an Azura with 3 heads and 6 arms. His 6 arms abruptly shot out, blasting apart the cudgel shadows that filled the sky. Feng Lin was also forced to retreat. 3 heads 6 arms. When he saw the strange appearance of the Killer King, Feng Lin also transformed. He was now a golden monkey with 3 heads and 6 arms, wielding a total of 3 cudgels. Both of them then lunged at each other. Boom! Each of the Killer King's 6 arms was armed with a different weapon. A fork, a saber, a sword, etc. He clashed against Feng Lin, causing the sounds of it to echo out unceasingly. The two of them were like giant primordial gods from the myths as they fought each other. The shockwaves they produced completely demolished everything in their surroundings. Grow, grow, grow. After a long time and still having no victory in sight, the Killer King howled madly. His body expanded again, becoming 1,000 meters tall Azura. Transform, transform, transform. Feng Lin's body shook as he transformed, also becoming a 1,000 meters tall ape that was capable of extreme destruction. The two gigantic figures clashed again. You can grow, I can transform. As their sizes grew, the amount of strength they could wield naturally increased as well. The 18th level of hell was completely destroyed. Next was the 17th level, 16th level, 15th level. These levels of hell were destroyed, and the millions of ghosts and demons here all perished under the aftershock, their souls scattered for eternity. Their fight soon reached a climax, neither was willing to give up, and they unleashed their full power. A long time later, the two giant figures finally separated. The ultimate Killer King stared fixedly at Feng Lin. "What mythological path are you on exactly? Why, your spirit appearance is that of a monkey." Feng Lin coldly laughed, but he didn't reply. The Killer King snorted coldly. "Although you already broke 7 levels of my hell, there are still 11 levels left. I want to see how long you can persist. Today, I'm going to grind your heart until your spirit force dries up and let you rot in here forever, severed from all chances of reincarnation." He stood in the air and peered down imperiously at Feng Lin, his eyes filled with a cruel killing intent, like how he was watching an ant he was about to crush to death. Feng Lin drew in a deep breath, his face as calm as ever. "Do you know of a cudgel technique that falls from the sky?" "Huh?" The Killer King didn't even react in time. At the next moment, he only saw a metal cudgel rapidly growing larger in his field of vision. The golden monkey leaped and arched his back like a bent bow. All of a sudden, the entirety of his strength was transferred into the metal cudgel as he slammed down heavily with it. The speed of this attack was incomparably quick, but it appeared exceptionally slow on the surface, slamming down bit by bit and causing a visual illusion. Heart monkey force, boundless empowerment. His strength was enhanced by 2 times, 3 times, 10 times. The power in the strike was enhanced to the max. The cudgel was also like a giant pillar, causing destruction everywhere it passed by. The 11th level of hell, destroyed. The 10th level, destroyed. The 9th level, destroyed. Destruction. 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 Under the power of that strike, everything broke apart as the surroundings were completely devastated. The 18 levels of hell was penetrated through, and the demons and ghosts within all turned to dust. What are demons and ghosts? What are painted beauties? What are bladed mountains and sea of fire? What are devious traps? They would never be able to block this heavenfall cudgel strike. The golden monkey walked while wielding his metal cudgel. In area 10,000 miles around him, everything was purged. Chapter 250, Heavenfall Cudgel Technique. The golden-furred monkey soared into the air and slammed down with the cudgel, penetrating many levels of hell in a single move. Under the aftershock of this attack, the demons and ghosts all screamed in misery as they were transformed into dust. No. When the metal cudgel slammed down, the Killer King rushed out. His mental realm suffered damage. This hell was something he created from his spirit force. Now that it was being broken, his consciousness wavered due to the backlash. Boundless baleful aura swept out, destroying everything the cudgel came in contact with. This place was the home ground of the Killer King, and it wasn't advantageous for Feng Lin to fight protracted battles here. Hence, he wanted to destroy this battlefield. The heart monkey force he could muster was all infused into his cudgel, strengthening it to the max. This cudgel fell from the heavens, containing such might that was enough to destroy a world. It caused the ultimate Killer King's heart to tremble. He felt like a calamity was about to descend on him. At this moment, he could truly feel the terror of death. Although he had transformed into the ruler of the dead, Yama King, and had massacred millions of innocents, bringing death with him wherever he went. Now, it was finally his turn. Evil people will have evil karma. It isn't that there is no karma, only that the time for it has yet to come. Now, the time has come. This is impossible. How can I die to a junior? The Killer King inclined his head and stared at the Heavenfall Cudgel technique. A moment later, his expression contorted. He roared and used his horns, butting upward to retaliate. Asuras were heretic gods that were born from the Blood Sea. They massacred millions, using slaughter to form their das. Boundless killing chi flooded the hell. The Killer King's horn wanted to pierce the sky through. He ignored the possibility of his life and wanted to perish together with this damnable monkey. Boom! The horns collided against the cudgel. There was actually no sound from the collision at all. However, the intense impact created formless ripples of aftershock that caused utter devastation everywhere they spread to. A truly loud sound had no noise. When the energy in one's attack was strengthened to the extreme and exceeded the dimension's limits, the creatures in the lower dimensions wouldn't be able to sense it. Only the Golden Monkey and Yama King could sense the power levels of each other as they fought intensely. Their physical struggle could be seen on the surface, but in truth, their spirit forces were clashing as well. The killing aura radiating from the Killer King was like waves of black-colored water, surging with great momentum. As for Feng Lin, his entire being gleamed with golden light as he exuded an inextinguishable ruthless qi from ancient times. The golden light and black water each covered half of this dimension as they clashed. However, the golden light grew stronger and stronger. Beams of golden light penetrated the black water, causing it to reduce in volume as it receded. What? The Killer King couldn't believe his eyes. He only felt that his killing aura seemed to have met with something that could counter it. He had no way to fight back. What mythological path are you walking on exactly? How can this be? The Killer King howled. The Killer King was walking on the legendary Asura god mythological path, yet the nature of his cultivation was actually suppressed. It was inferior to Feng Lin's mythological path. He didn't know that when Sun Wukong had wreaked havoc in the underworld, the Yama King had been just an inconsequential god to it. Before the great sage equal to the heavens, the Yama King was no different from an ant. Destroy. Feng Lin's eyes gleamed with a golden light, his great sage will empowering him. The black water was completely destroyed by the golden light. The Asura spirit of the Killer King collapsed as explosions rang out in the hell he created. This dimension then started to shatter into pieces. Feng Lin's eyes brightened. They had returned to reality. How can this be? Our Asura sect, will never spare you. The Killer King's body lay on the ground as he forced the words out. At the next moment, his breathing stopped completely. His eyes were wide open and blood flowed out from all his 7 apertures. Dying a death filled with everlasting regret. This was truly the case. Feng Lin's countenance was pale. His body shuddered as his qi and blood churned wildly. He couldn't even stand stably. But despite so, a smile could be seen on his face as he started laughing from the depths of his heart. Killing people, killing hearts? This Killer King used the Asura gene to kill the hearts of people, but Feng Lin was very disappointed with this. Although the people whom hearts were killed wouldn't be saved no matter how advanced medical technology was, once the Killer King met someone with a will and spirit force stronger than himself, the Killer King would die for sure. But then again, the Asura gene was a variation-grade transcendent gene. Maybe only a rare few would be able to surpass him at the same level. However, unfortunately for the Killer King, Feng Lin's spiritual stone monkey gene was a perfect grade transcendent gene. Leaving aside the grades, just based on the abilities and origin, Feng Lin's gene already far surpassed the Asura gene. One must know that back when Sun Wukong had wreaked havoc in the underworld, there had been countless Asuras that died to his cudgel. They were simply insignificant to him. It could be said that the moment the ultimate Killer King decided to compete with Feng Lin in spirit force, his death was already destined. Sadly for the Killer King, he found success being an Asura and also met defeat because of being an Asura. Feng Lin glanced at the Killer King who had died. With a wave of his hand, he absorbed the Killer King's body into his furnace. After repeated battles, he exhausted too much origin qi, but he was very satisfied with how things ended up. He had the humanoid queen's corpse and there was no doubt that he would be ranked first in this round of examination. No one would be able to take the position of the first ranker from him. With the humanoid queen's corpse in his possession, even if he didn't kill any more aberrations for the remaining 6 days, it was impossible for the other exam candidates to surpass him no matter what they tried. Next, Feng Lin finally could set his heart at ease and focus on cultivation. After so many battles, Feng Lin felt that his accumulations were already sufficient and he could continue to try and break through. He found a remote mountain cave. The thick layer of earth isolated the heat from the sun and coldness of the night as he quietly cultivated. He then took out a medium-scale queen's gene hypothesis and mixed it with transcendent holy water that he had concocted from the 8 divine pearls of the Yamata no Orochi. His stomach was like a fiery furnace, rapidly transforming the nutrients into genetic potential. Genetic potential plus 120%. Plus 120%. Plus 120%. Feng Lin's genetic potential explosively surged. And with every increase, he would gain over 100%, which was a free basic genetic point. His body was like a parched desert that obtained water. Each of his cells howled like wild beasts as they frenziedly devoured the nutrients to replenish and strengthen themselves. Through the many battles, Feng Lin expended too much origin energy. He consumed genetic potions and the gene hypothesis of aberrations to allow himself to recover quickly, becoming stronger than ever before. Energy Evolution Index, 4.55%, 4.61%, 4.65%. This index was also slowly climbing upward. Vitality Stat, 375, 380, 385. The various numerical data on his stats started to shoot up. Feng Lin cultivated through the night. Currents of heat radiated from him, rising rapidly through the air in the sealed mountain cave. Unknowingly, this place became as hot as a fiery furnace, causing him to perspire intensely. This cultivation session lasted a total of 2 days and 2 nights. His genetic potential reached a total of 268.8, gaining a total of 2 free transcendent genetic points. In that case, what was he waiting for? After repeatedly experiencing major battles, Feng Lin felt that his body had been tempered enough. He had no worries adding points to the strengthening tallies of his genes. Feng Lin decisively added the 2 points to his transcendent gene, the spiritual stone monkey gene. His vitality stat instantly changed. Name, Feng Lin. Vitality stat, 520. Transcendent gene, spiritual stone monkey gene X4. Primeval gene, stone monkey gene X10, spirit gene X10. Basic gene, monkey gene X10, stone birth gene X10, adrenaline gene X4, mental gene X9, psychokinesis gene X6, spiritual gene X8, bloodthirst gene X10. Genetic potential 68.8.